I'd like to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of November 10th, 2020, 7 p.m. web-based regular meeting hosted by Zoom. First on our agenda is a public hearing, Tarzia, special permit, accessory apartment, 103 Putnam Park Road. Kitty, if you'd be kind enough.
Public notice to be posted October 23rd through November 6th. The Bethel Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on November 10th, 2020 at 7 p.m. using the virtual platform Zoom to hear the application of M. Tarzia for an accessory apartment at 103 Putnam Park Road in the R80 zone. This property can be found in the tax assessor's office as map 54, block 53, and lot 02-4. At this hearing, interested persons will be heard. Written communication should be submitted by 3 p.m. on Monday, November 9th, 2020. Email address is landuse@bethelct.gov. Dated this 22nd day of October, 2020 at Bethel, Connecticut. Pat Rich, Chairman.
Thank you, Kitty.
Welcome.
All right, I'm sorry.
David, could you bring up the
Are you
file?
speaking to this application?
Excuse me?
Are you speaking to this application?
This is our application, yes.
Right.
Tony Rubino and me.
Yeah.
All right, so if you want to do your presentation on this application to the commission.
I'm unsure what that means. We were told to show up at this meeting, so here we are. I'm not sure what do you mean? What do we
You would be talking about what your application is for the accessory, or Beth, did you want to speak to it?
David, could you bring up the application?
I'm
for
working
me,
on
please?
that right now. Okay, it's up.
I'm sorry. The application is for, if you don't mind me speaking,
No, go ahead.
I didn't prepare a written report tonight. David, could you go, let's see.
You want me to give you a remote control, Beth?
Yeah, give me control, please.
Okay.
Okay. So the property is located at 103 Putnam Park Road. The applicant has submitted this as a visual of the proposed addition. It is not a separate dwelling unit. It will be attached to the home.
Correct.
The application itself, the size of the unit, as you can see, is 953 square feet, something along those lines. Also, it is a proposed 1-bedroom with a kitchen and a large family room. There's 2 egresses, one to the rear, one to the front. There's also a connection to the main dwelling, which is a requirement of your regulations. There's also included in the application an affidavit for the accessory apartment stating that they understand what the use is for. There is a survey from I can't read that right now. I apologize.
That looks to be 1997.
Thank you very
That's
much.
correct. 1997, correct.
Thank you very much, young eyes. And one comment, there's 2 comments that I would make as your staff. One would be that we will require, if the application is approved, that we will require an as-built survey at the end of construction. The other item pertaining to this is, excuse me 1 minute. I apologize. The other item that would be have to be done by the commission, if the commission chooses to, there would have to be a waiver for the square footage. The maximum square footage allowed is 900 square feet, and they're proposing 953. That is a common occurrence that you've done in previous accessory apartment approvals. And I hope by the end of this year that we change this regulation so it's an administrative approval, no longer needing to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's all I have for you.
Okay, perfect. All right, then we'll reach out to, well, we do have the public here. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this application? Please raise your hand. David, would you be kind enough to instruct people how to raise their hand?
Certainly. Let me just hang on. Beth, can you stop controlling my screen? Thank you. Okay, thank you. So as Pat was saying, this hearing is open for public participation. How you would go about participating or stating that you have public comment to offer is there is a toolbar at the bottom of the Zoom program. One of the items on that toolbar says participants. You would click on that button and there would be a list of persons that appear on the right-hand side of the screen. You would find your name and there will be an option for you to raise your hand. If you are participating in this meeting by phone, you would press #6. That indicates that you also want to raise your hand. Pat, I am not seeing anybody at this time.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Nobody yet.
All right, then we'll reach out to commission members. Kitty, I'll start with you.
I can't think of, they already have the certificate for occupancy that has to be signed once a year. There's going to be 1 meter, correct? Yes, for the house,
Correct.
Correct,
for
yes.
both places.
Yep.
So I can't think of anything. I'll pass.
Thank you. John,
I have no questions, thank you.
Penny,
No questions, thank you.
Ken,
No questions.
Bob Legnard,
No question. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Rich Tibbetts,
In the hood.
Linda,
No, application is straightforward and I know the area. I find no problems with it.
thank you. Rob Wallace,
Nope, no questions. Looks good.
okay. I also have no questions. So do I have a consensus that we can close this public hearing? If everybody could either raise their hand or say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, for sure.
Opposed? Abstentions? This is passed. Thank you. Moving on. We have Shelley Woods, LLC, Tim Draper, 9 units, Connecticut State Statute 8-30G, affordable housing, 47 Shelley Road. Attorney Marcus?
Good evening. How's everybody?
Good.
Thank you. Good, good. So we left the last meeting with a number of comments and questions. And I think rather than, I know you got a pretty long agenda. I think rather than waste too much time, I'm going to call Steve Trinkus. Are you here? Steve?
Yeah, I'm here, Neil.
Oh, excellent. Good. I think I'll ask you to jump in and outline the changes that you've made to the design to address specifically issues raised by the review engineer and the traffic consultant.
Neil,
Okay.
if I may interrupt for just a moment.
Yes,
Beth,
ma'am.
did you want to read the memorandum or do you want to, we can follow up with the memorandum?
I think you should just let the applicant go forward with their
Okay.
presentation.
Okay,
And David,
perfect.
could you share your screen with Steve so he can use the revised
Could he
drawings?
Beth, could he let me share mine? I have the PDF up.
Yes, Mr. Trinkus.
Because then you can
screen
see my
sharing is-
mouse. if I'm moving it.
Yep, screen sharing is enabled, Mr. Trinkus.
Excellent.
Let me do this then. Okay, does everybody see the PDF of the pond?
Yes.
No, I
Okay,
didn't.
all right. Steve Trinkus, for the record, I'm a licensed PE in Connecticut, representing the applicant in this case. We're gonna start here on the road. There's 2 changes down at the bottom of the driveway where it intersects Shelley Road. The first is that the curve return on the south side of the driveway, previous was a 25-foot radius. We widened it out. It didn't have to be widened out. We widened it out to improve the vehicle path for the fire truck to 35 feet. This is 10 feet more than what a standard curve return is on a town road, just for a point of reference. Secondly, as Mike Galante had pointed out, that Shelley Road was a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. We measured the sight distance to that, and we have 365 feet looking to the south, so a vehicle coming north, and you have over 300 feet looking to the north to the cul-de-sac, which is a dead end. You can actually see all the way to the cul-de-sac, which is approximately 550 feet. So we greatly exceed, 300 feet in both of those directions. The retaining wall that is along the north side of the driveway from approximately station 75 up to about 250, we put a 3-foot-high black vinyl chain link fence. On top of the fence, it will go from station 0 plus 50 to 2 plus 70, basically 220 feet in length as a safety fence on top of that retaining wall. The next change, and just bear with me for a second while I get to the right drawing. The corner, which was approximately located between 300 and 400 feet on the driveway. The inside radius previously was 36 feet, which exceeded the minimum turning radius of 22.5 for the Town of Bethel aerial fire truck. We flattened the curve out. The inside radius went from 36 feet to 60 feet. So almost a doubling of that, and it widened out the driveway between stations 3 plus 70 to 4 plus 85. It goes from 20 foot up to 32 feet, and then obviously tapers back down to 20 foot. The retaining wall, the swale on the north side were all adjusted to this. Two things this does: it easily improves the vehicle path coming up here. We didn't have to, but we chose to do this to address Tom Galliford's comments and those comments of both Todd Ritchie and Mike Galante. Also, now a vehicle coming down the driveway sees, quite honestly, to the throat of the road coming up, so it would easily see a fire truck coming up. Also, it's important to note that the top of a fire truck is 7 to 8 foot above grade. So, if you're in a car, you're going to see the fire truck coming up without a doubt, but the wall is no longer in a sight distance line at all coming around the curve. We redid the vehicle turning templates based on this new geometry. For the most part, both the fire truck and the garbage truck stay more so in their lane. But again, this is a driveway. This is not a road. References to calling it a road are simply incorrect and are not applicable. As with any driveway, a vehicle, especially an emergency vehicle, may traverse the center line. It happens on town and state roads all the time. I actually got passed by a fire truck 3 days ago on a local 24-foot wide road, and we all pulled over, and he pretty much drove right down the middle of the road. Emergency vehicles have the right of way. Any other vehicle, whether the fire truck is coming up from behind you or you're coming the opposite direction, it is a law. You must pull over and give them free passage. That applies in any case. In this particular case with the driveway, it is, again, it meets the fire code at 20 foot wide, and in the curve here, it is much wider than that going forward. We also submitted over the weekend, and I thank David for sending me the DeMarco plans for the Chestnut Ridge thing. I had wanted to get the plans to the town sooner, but I needed to look at those plans prior to finishing the memo. I'm going to go through the fire marshal's comments from back in both June 26th and then September 28th, and then his current memo, which I think was dated perhaps yesterday. We provided the turning movements, so that's been addressed. According to the ISO criteria, a duplex structure requires 500 gallons per minute for a 1 hour duration. Again, the turning movements have been shown. The center line grade is 12%. That meets the Town of Bethel standards, and that is how it is measured. It is not measured on the inside or outside of the curve at all. The September 28th, 2000 memo, again, He had asked in that one to show the turning movements coming in from Shelley Road, which we have done now. Again, the ISO flow was provided for that. In his comments today, he basically requested that we upgrade our 10,000 gallon cistern, which we voluntarily provided to him when he requested it earlier, to 30,000 to have 60 minutes at that 500 gallons per minute. I discussed this with Joe Versteeg from Torrington. Joe is a fire expert and code expert with regarding fires and requirements. According to both the Connecticut Fire Safety or Fire Prevention codes, they contain no requirements for providing on-site water for this type of construction. Each of these duplex units, we have a 1 hour firewall between each of the units, as will the triplex. So the internal walls are a 1 hour rated firewall. And this is what has been constructed on the 91 Worcester Street project also. So, you know, the town of Bethel has pumper trucks and or tanker trucks. The bottom line is both of those can get up the driveway, but initially there is 10,000 gallons of water sitting here for use by the fire department. I've been through the driveway alignment. We did get a response back from the state health department regarding whether this would be a public water supply or private. They said it would be a public system, which is fine. It doesn't change the fact that we can easily put wells up here. On a project that I worked on in Middlebury, Connecticut for the West Shore homeowners, where it was a bunch of cottages on Lake Quassapog. Dudley Ashwood originally designed, and then I took over a large on-site system, a community system for that site. And they also put in a public water supply system that Ron Black designed and implemented and oversees, because that's his business. And in the case of a public water supply system for a site like this, the wells will all be drilled very close together. There would be a small structure with the tank and all the piping. And again, the yield tests and locations are all determined by Ron. That has to be approved by the state of Connecticut. And it's clear that we have many spots on this site. As an example, it could go up here behind building C. It's well away from anything. We have actually open space on two sides, the east and the north. So there would be no potential sources of pollution on either of those properties. And our septic systems are all way away from this. Regarding septic suitability and the jurisdiction of the health department, at this point in this planning process, we're looking at suitability of the soils. System A, which serves the triplex, is for 6 bedrooms. You can consider it a 6-bedroom house from a practical perspective. We meet the required MLSS and the required effective leaching area for the system. The reserve is located here to the south of building D. The other systems, let me just go back to the other plan. The other systems for the 3 duplexes are all located near the southern property line. And again, all of them are sized for 4 bedrooms. There are reserves for each and every one that conform to the health code. For the test holes for each system, since I'm on this page, I'll go systems B, C, and D first, and then go back to A. We have, soil ledge where we have in 33D, ledge is greater than 70 inches. There was no modeling. That is the hole that's right up here on the edge of the map. 34, we had ledge at 55 and no modeling. We only need 48 inches, so we clearly meet. There are actually down gradient holes, which is the system for C, 35 and 36. Again, ledge is 61 or 77 inches with no modeling, so that complies to the health code. System D with 37 and 39, we have 52 and 66 inches. And yeah, 39 actually was 48 inches, so it ranges between 48 and 66. and therefore it meets minimum suitability for that. All the perk tests were, I believe, inch and 10, maybe inch and 20. Going back to System A, within the system, the holes are 17D, 18D, and 19D. Ledge ranges between 48 and 75 inches. So clearly these areas are also suitable under the code. As the health department previously requested, they would like some downgradient holes prior to actual permitting, and that is fine. That's a common occurrence. It's even a common occurrence when we do residential subdivisions, because you generally are digging holes, and if the house moves, generally the system will move, and you have to wind up digging new holes prior to actual permitting. That is not unusual. It is also not a public health or safety issue. I think it was 2 meetings ago, the commission had asked about other projects in town that had steep driveways like what we were proposing, and Kingswood came up. I believe somebody mentioned Fawn Drive, and then the work at Rockwell School came up, which we discussed last week. One of the questions at Rockwell School, I think Todd said, well, they pretty much matched the existing grade. His firm, prior to, I believe, him going there, did the work for the school. But if you look at, the town of Bethel GIS or Google Maps, there's clearly ample room that those driveways could have been flared out away from the entrances where they are now, to not only been a flatter driveway, but a safer driveway, because those grades are measuring 13%, which is steeper than what is proposed here. The reason I requested to look at the DeMarco application at 42 Chestnut Ridge was I drove in there once with my car, and one owner or a contractor had a pickup truck parked in one of the spaces that it was very difficult to turn around the driveway being in a car. So in taking the PDFs which David provided me and scaling them up to an appropriate scale, I used the same vehicle turning program to see the movements of both the aerial truck and the fire truck. The aerial truck and, excuse me, a garbage truck going in and out of that site, assuming that they were coming up from Greenwood Avenue. It could not make the turn if you were coming north on Chestnut Ridge at that 90-degree turn without being completely on the opposite side of the driveway to where you should be. For trucks coming up from Greenwood Avenue to the site and making a left-hand turn in, they can turn in, but they will go well over the center line. And if a fire truck goes in, continues turning north where most of the units are, and if he has to fight a fire at one of those houses, he's going to pretty much block that driveway between the truck itself and his outriggers, and nobody will get by if they're at the north end of that development. But in that particular case, while the turning movements do go in and out, it clearly crosses the center line, and that's the only way the vehicles will get in and out. And the point of doing that was to demonstrate that it is not uncommon that an emergency vehicle or a garbage truck is driving across the center line in a driveway. For both 49 Taylor Avenue and 91 Worcester Street, when Tom Galliford had asked us to show the turning templates for the aerial truck, it went up the center line in both cases. And that was deemed acceptable in both of those particular comments. The end of the day yesterday, Tim had called me. It was probably very late. It was after 7:30, maybe it was even 8 o'clock, to go to look at the Google site because there was a host of information provided on it, all pretty much dated yesterday. And I'm just going to quickly run through them. I have nothing to submit in writing. There was a document of affordable housing history in Bethel. Again, I guess that's informational purposes, but it's not really applicable here. There was what appeared to be perhaps PowerPoint slides in PDF format from somebody, Paul Troda, about principles of site evaluation. We don't know what his qualifications are or when that information was actually prepared. There were numerous documents called Pipeline, which was put out by Wastewater Clearinghouse, which I believe comes from EPA. It came out of West Virginia. These were from Health. There were 3 documents in 2000, 2002, 2008, talking about soils and how to log soils. With all due respect to the health department, I have logged soil since 1983. I don't need a document to tell me how to do them, as far as that goes. All of the soils within the proposed septic systems meet the minimum requirements under the health code, and that takes care of the technical standards in that particular case. Again, testing requirements for a public water supply system, that is done by the state. There are, I believe it's termed a phase 1, phase 2, and Ron Black, if we chose to use him, takes care of all that. They run the yield tests and everything else, and that is all subject to state approval. It is correct that the easement for open space from Shelley Road up to the site, up to the open space that Newtown Forest Association owns, runs along our southern property line. And it is true, it's 25 foot in width. The septic systems of B, C, and D are located partially within that area, but those are going to be meadow areas. There's no structures. There is nothing that impedes the access of pedestrians going that way. And I honestly, it will actually be a little easier walking being through a meadow than through the rocky soil that exists at this point in time. There was an engineering summary memo, I guess, for lack of a better term, by Beth, which I guess outlines all the history. It is my position we have addressed the technical engineering issues on this plan through wetlands and through this application. I've gone through the fire marshal comments and also the driveway comments. There's also a letter from Civil 1 talking about the test holes, and that and Health has raised the same issue, that she has discrepancies in her logs versus mine. I don't know what they wrote down, but the logs that are on my plan are what we found in the field, and I stand by those findings. There were holes when we dug them. The hard pan was 18 or 19 inches down. And then the next day when Laura came out, those holes actually had groundwater very close to the ground surface. And those were primarily in the area up in here, which we're not using for septic solely for that reason. While the soils meet, these were done in April and the groundwater was quite high. But we're not using those areas. So high groundwater doesn't matter to us as far as that goes. At this point in time, I know Tim would like to make a statement. I have no additional technical comments, but after his statement, if there's questions from the public and the commission, we will be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Steve. Before we get to Tim, I just want to comment on a couple of things that Steve has already covered, but just to give you my position on this vis-a-vis the requirements of Section 8-30G of the Connecticut General Statutes. First of all, I hope the commission appreciates the work that Steve has done on the driveway. As we've indicated, the driveway was designed to meet the standards, both the returns for the radius at the intersection with Shelley Road. It met the requirements. There is no additional requirement that applies because this project is being developed under 8-30G. If anything, it's the reverse, that the statute presumes that reasonable accommodations are made if there are issues that might impact public health and safety. But in this case, though there was no impact on public health and safety, the applicant has, through the engineer, redesigned the intersection with Shelley Road. And I think that should be an item for which they're commended, number one. Retaining wall obviously is simple. We made a safety improvement by the 3-foot chain link fence, but specifically the corner that Steve talked about that has been significantly widened out and regraded, flattened to a certain degree to address concerns that we, by the way, never felt were legitimate. As he indicated later in his presentation, Steve was talking about how fire trucks have a right of way. Fire trucks are high. You can see them. They can, their wheels can cross over the center line. The traffic coming in the other direction is required to pull off to the side of the road and actually stop moving. So if people follow normal traffic driving and traffic safety requirements, then the design that was there with a 36-foot wide inside radius was fine. And the 20-foot wide roadway, driveway was also fine. But they've been all increased. 60 feet is the inside radius. 32 feet would be the travel way. It's all been done. You know, we disagree with the engineers who reviewed it, and we disagree with the fire marshal's observations, but it's all been done. Then, of course, what can't be lost on you is what Steve said at the end of his presentation on the driveway. He talked about the DeMarco plan on Chestnut Street. By the way, I happen to drive by that at least twice a day, if not more frequently. And quite honestly, I think that's a great project. A, I think it's good looking. B, I think it's based on the fact that it's being occupied quickly. It's a home run. It's great. However, the design of that project is really deficient. And as Steve pointed out, after our last meeting, we listened to Mike Galante and listened to the fire marshal's report. I looked at that project because I mean it's under construction. It's brand new, and I said, how the heck do they get fire trucks and garbage trucks and even big dump trucks in there with the way that driveway is designed? And the answer is, you don't under the criteria that you want to apply on Shelley Woods. It just doesn't work under that criteria. We've now corrected Shelley Woods to address what you thought the criteria was, but it's really, it's disturbing to me. I mean, you know, we spent a lot of time listening to the review engineer talk about how cars on Shelley Woods are not going to be able to exit when there's a fire. Well, quite honestly, on Chestnut Street, they don't have a prayer of getting out of there if there's a fire. I mean, at least on Shelley Woods, they can try to get down the driveway. But then, you know, once a fire truck is in there or any emergency vehicle, that property is shut down for other traffic. And now it's interesting because, you know, you're going to say, well, you know, that's in downtown Bethel, which it is. However, the safety criteria is actually greater in downtown Bethel because on Shelley Woods, if God forbid one of these units that we build catches fire, it's not close to other houses. On Chestnut Street, you've got development that's in a very, you know, thickly developed neighborhood. And of course, if you talk to the fire department, they're going to tell you that the key to their success is not necessarily saving buildings, it's saving lives and stopping the fire from spreading to adjacent properties, containment. So I had to marvel. I said, well, you know, with all due respect, it's not that I don't like the Chestnut Street project. It's just that all of the things we're worried about on Shelley Wood just seem to slip by on Chestnut Street. And that only concerns me if I sense that the position that the reviewers are taking and trying to influence your decision is discriminatory. And that worries me because as I understand, Chestnut Street is not affordable housing. That's not to say that it won't be affordable, but it's not pursuant to 8-30G. But that is a serious concern. As Steve mentioned it, and again, it's somewhat like the idea that the grade of our driveway was dangerous, but the grade at the school is not dangerous because it was done many years ago. And I still marvel at the fact that that Malone and McBroom didn't bring up to the commission, while you're renovating the school, you might fix your driveway. As Steve says, quite honestly, it doesn't appear to be that tough a fix. However, I only bring that out because there's a temptation here for the commission to be led down a path which is discriminatory, and I don't want to see that happen. Because quite honestly, I haven't seen that happen before with this commission. By the way, Beth's memo, which I did read, I don't know, I mean, Steve dismisses it as being somewhat irrelevant to the issues before you, and it is. However, it's a good exercise in what the town of Bethel has accomplished and for which the commission should be commended. So on the one hand, I worry, but on the other hand, I have some confidence that you'll come to the proper conclusion when it comes to the focal point of this application, which is safety, health and safety. Steve gave you a long discussion of the septics and the wells. I mean, what he's talking about here, he's a young guy. I've been doing this for a lot longer. And while I've been doing this, I mean, the approach to analyzing septic suitability and analyzing a probability and methodology for serving a site with potable water, he's using traditional approaches and very standard guidelines. So there's nothing that we're creating here which is unique. You guys on the commission and ladies on the commission have been applying these standards across the board for years. There shouldn't be a new standard on Shelley Road because it's under 8-30G. So after we were concerned about the grade that the dumpsters would be sitting on, and after we're concerned about the site, whether you'll see fire trucks coming around the curve, and after you put all that stuff aside, at the end of the day, the commission has not, nor have your consultants in reality identified issues of health or safety that have not been addressed in this application. There's a dispute with the fire marshal over the size of the water tank. As Steve has pointed out, the requirement under the state standards doesn't require a water tank. The water tank that has been voluntarily provided goes above and beyond the ISO flow requirements for the type of housing. Again, we're not going to say, well, because it's a different type of housing than exists in the rest of the neighborhood, you therefore have to move it into a different category for determining fire flow. That's not true. These are still houses, the residences are, they may be attached, but they're single family. And so we've addressed that. And again, the fire marshal will dispute that 30,000 is better than 10,000. But the fact of the matter is that 10,000 goes above and beyond what's required. And there's no health or safety reason to go even further beyond that. So the end of the day is we spend a lot of time, which is important, reviewing the issues. The neighbors will not like this project, and nothing we say or you do will ever change that. But if you look around at affordable housing in Bethel, and Beth is pointed out some of the historical projects, but I'm just thinking of what Tim Draper has done recently. And quite honestly, Taylor Avenue was pretty controversial. Neighbors came out worried about that. The commission had its concerns. The reviewing engineers, and they had their concerns. The project was much bigger than it started out to be. But at the end of the day, maybe it's just my approach to life, that as I drive along and look out the window, if I see something that's better than what was there before, I usually think that's pretty good. If you get out Taylor Avenue, prior to the project, the affordable housing project that was built, you would see what I would call basically a garbage heap. It was a burnt out wreck of a old, somewhat run down property. I hate to offend the prior owner, but that's the condition it was in. What you do now, if you go down there, you see a modern, well-kept building that is fully occupied. It has been since day one with very little turnover. So it's fulfilling the mandate of affordable housing. It's reusing a site that that was derelict, and it even made some road improvements to a road that I thought was an abomination from day one. It's still a tough road, but it's a hell of a lot better. So if I look at on Worcester Street, even the project that's still under construction, I will tell you that that actually has improved that neighborhood. I don't think any property owner there could say this has devalued his or her property. So we fear the worst, and we let our imagination sometimes get the best of us, particularly when it's needled on by people who say, well, we just don't want the neighborhood to change. However, I think that as we finish this application process, hopefully this evening, that we've answered all of your questions, because at the end of the day, that's what we've got to do. Whether Steve Trinkus and Todd Ritchie can ever agree on what time of day it is irrelevant to me. What we need to know is that the design that Steve Trinkus has put into effect on the site plan, it works. It meets all of the requirements. And to the extent it met all the requirements and the commission said, we'd like it better, he's actually done that. So I'm going to stop there. I know Tim wanted to address the commission, but I do think that at this point, you have a complete, full application. But if you're missing anything and you feel that we need to provide it to your consultants, even after the hearing closes, we'll do it. But I thank you for the time and consideration you give us. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Tim, did you want to say something?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Tim Draper, 48 Aunt Patty's Lane West, Bethel, Connecticut. First tonight, I would like to thank my engineer, Steve Trinkus, and my attorney, Neil Marcus, for their tireless work on this project, and also to the commission for their volunteered time. Tonight, I'm here to answer a question for months that has gone unanswered. I've stayed silent for too long, why I believe the land use department and the commissions have discriminated against me and cost me thousands of dollars. This is to answer Emily Geary's question of 51 Shelley Road at the opening of this public hearing. Her question was, how did we get here? And that's a very good question. And I'm going to give you the answer in facts and a history of the property and how we did get here. Well, Ms. Geary, first off, the town of Bethel's assessment on undeveloped property is very high. As a developer, it makes no sense to hold on to lots and continue to pay high taxes on them. In fact, a few years ago, I had a 4.5 acre piece of property on Chestnut Ridge Road that I donated to the town of Bethel without any acknowledgement whatsoever from any townspeople. I've been paying taxes on Shelley Road for well over 10 years now. The real estate market during those 10 years has been suppressed up until recently. So we decided we needed to develop the property a few years ago. The property is almost 8 acres. So we requested a variance for 2 4-acre lots from the Zoning Board of Appeals. We were denied by a majority, not a supermajority, which would have been needed for approval by the Zoning Board of Appeals. We tried multiple times to come up with other options to develop the property with the town. All were rejected, absolutely refusing to work with us, denying us at every opportunity. And anyone can ask Mr. Weston at 37 Shelley Road, and he will confirm this. Subsequently, a local developer applied for a similar request right after ours was denied and was approved on the first try. Assuming a precedent was set, we reapplied and again was denied. Seems there's no consistency within the departments or the commissions. Recently, another local developer came before the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Inland Wetlands Commission. This project requested 3 variances. One, the exact one what I requested for on Shelley Road originally, our rear lot, only ours is in a R80 zone. Hers is an R20 zone. And the difference is in a R20 zone is half acre, we're in 2 acre, which requires a special permit. Also, that second variance was for another rear lot. And that did not even meet the double zone acreage required for that lot. And yet they got all variances and a special permit. So why were we denied one approved? Another double standard there? After coming across a post on social media where the chairman of this very commission posted in regards to these builders' current project in Bethel, and I quote, as being built by 2 of Bethel's finest builders, unquote. When these builders apply for variance, they are given away on the first try. Mine are met with opposition consistently, yet are similar, if not exactly the same. Clearly, the chairman has favorites, and obviously, I am not one of them. I am asking the chairman to recuse herself on all of my applications for this very reason. That statement, I feel, indicates they have their favorites. I think it's very telling and unprofessional for a commission member to post such comments on social media. So I do feel discriminated against by the Bethel Land Use Department and Committee? Absolutely. The same project I'm referring to, and I'm quoting from their application, their hardship that was approved reads as such. The location of wetlands on the site, as well as topography in the rear of the site, make it exceptionally difficult to lay out the subdivision without use of rear lots. The variance will facilitate an orderly and efficient layout where I preserve the maximum amount of wetlands and a maximum amount of open space. This variance was approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals with a resolution in hand before the meeting commenced, and approved on the very first try in wetlands. Although they have 2 wetlands on that parcel. I was denied at wetlands on another 8-30G application, which is in front of your board right now, even though there are no wetlands on that property. I'm sorry, but this certainly feels discriminatory to me and all the professional people working alongside me. Back to Mrs. Geary's question. We had requested a variance twice, similar to another developer that was granted on Payne Road, but we were also going to grant access from Weston's driveway on 37 Shelley Road, a driveway that is considered dangerous, serving 5 houses. Tried to work with the town, a driveway that is considered a potential safety issue. We offered another alternative, one that neighbors wanted. The letters are on the record. One that Wright Pierce's engineer, Jeff Dewey, said on record of the on-site, and I'm quoting, on-site review of driveway reconstruction 37 road, unquote. And I quote again, additionally, considering the number of homes served on that driveway at 37 Shelley Road, another means of access to the partial should be pursued for viability. All we asked for was that the variance be able to build 2 houses on 8 acres that conformed with the neighborhood, and in return, we would provide emergency access to those 5 houses that live on that driveway. The town also spent taxpayers' money in fighting Mr. Weston when all this could have been avoided. So we as builders see that one builder gets variances and we are denied time and time again. There seems to be no consistency within the land use department or commissions. I could tell you of numerous last minute document dumps is what I would call them. I just got one last night. It was at 6:35. After I read it, I forwarded it to my engineer and he did his best to get that today. Numerous extensions, the governor's Lamont extensions, every roadblock they could throw at us. There is definitely a double standard that the taxpayers of Bethel are paying for. When I sit here and try to run my business, provide for my family, and see on social media commission members speaking about other developers and those builders slide through, yet it has literally taken me years to get my projects to fruition, then yes, I can say there is something seriously wrong with the land use department and commissions. So Mrs. Geary, I'll end this with one last comment so you can understand how we got here. I have made calls to the officials of Bethel early on after seeing we are going to be fought on all of our projects because of their discrimination against me. I offered to sell my property to them for open space at market rate. No communication was returned. No discussions were offered. So the town won't let us put 2 houses on 8 acres in the commissions. They are not interested in purchasing, and they think we should just sit here and pay exorbitant taxes on raw land without doing anything. We even offered to make both projects revert back to houses, but they refuse even to discuss. Ms. Geary and all others, you can be as mad as you want at me, and you wish you can be as mad at me as you wish, and I understand your frustration, but sometimes it's not all what you see. The Land Use Department and commissions have continually refused to work with us in the best interest of the town. And now, only that they have used our money to do so. I know how much I've spent. Ask your officials how much money the Land Use Department and commissions have spent fighting me and what the state wants for Bethel. Even the commission is quoted as saying, in making its decision, the commission recognizes the need for affordable housing in the town of Bethel. That's right off a piece of paper signed by the chairwoman. In the end, there could have been 2 houses on Shelley Road that look just like the other 2 that I built next to them, and 1 house on Good Hill. That would have been the end of all of this. Easy? Right. Now look where we are. Hundreds of thousands of legal fees and engineering fees that the town has paid for, and myself, and to what end? Taylor Avenue was approved, I was fought on. Good Hill will most likely be approved, which I was fought on. Worcester Street was approved, which I was fought on. And in the end, Shelley Road will be as well. Maybe it's time someone asks our elected officials how the Land Use Department and commissions are able to have an open checkbook with our taxes and abuse the rules they are obligated to govern by. I am not asking for special privileges. I am asking to be treated fairly, to have the same rules apply to all. And you can tell you, and I can tell you, they do not. It's been all delay tactics, last minute document dumps, outrageous requests, and total bias and discrimination. That is how we got to this point. Thank you.
Mr. Draper, I am going to address one thing, because when
I'm
you
not gonna respond to anything.
No, I don't want you to respond. I just am going to say, yes, I made a comment responding to a request. Was this an 8-30G? And I said, no, it's not an 8-30G. And it's being built by 2 of Bethel's best developers. 2 of Bethel's best. That could be 2 of 10, 2 of 15. I did not mention the developers, nor did I mention you, nor will I recuse myself from any of your hearings. We're here tonight to hear your application, and we can't talk to decisions made by any other land use commissions. We can only talk to decisions made to ours. And at this point, I would like to move back to your application. Neil, you're muted.
The applicant at this point will rest. You should all breathe a sigh of relief when I'm muted. But the applicant will rest and answer any questions that you might have.
I don't want to say time.
Pat, it's Tom Galliford. If I could just ask a couple questions.
I was going to ask you,
Sure.
based on your memo.
Excuse me, everybody. Before you start, can I just take a moment to introduce the people that are here for tonight in regards to the town? You have Brian Bogan, who's the Assistant Director of Environmental Services for the Bethel Health Department. You also have Laura Basile, our Director of Health. Tom Galliford, who's going to be speaking first, who's the Fire Marshal for the town of Bethel. And Brian Baker, PE from Civil One Engineering. He's the Director of Engineering. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. Tom, over to you.
All right, thank you. Just for Steve, just because we're the ones that are kind of going back and forth here with the comments, I guess we'll do the easy ones first. So if you can just show me my last comment that's been on here that you say you reference in the turning radiuses. So for the angle of approach, I'm not sure where that is shown exactly on there, whether it's on the like page 17 for the fire apparatus turning plan. Just if you can show me, if you can just point me to what page that depicts
actually the
angle of approach from Shelley onto the development. I know it goes into a hill. Let me just explain. I know it, enters into a hill driveway. So I just want to make sure that, you know, we have a decent angle of approach there that meets the code.
It's on sheet 3 of 17, Tom. That's the entrance site development plan. And you'll see the radius on the south side of the driveway. So if you're coming north on Shelley Road towards the site, that radius is 35 feet instead of 25.
Okay.
So it flattened out.
Yeah.
You know,
So-
it flared it out more than it was.
All right, so I guess we're confused. So I'm talking about the angle of approach so that, you know, where the Shelley Road meets onto the new driveway.
Oh, the grade, you're talking the grade.
The grade, yeah, so that, you know, something,
okay.
a vehicle doesn't bottom out, specifically a large
It
fire
doesn't.
truck, so.
On sheet number 10 of 17, the profile, the first 30 feet of the driveway from the edge of Shelley Road into the site is no more than 5.8%. So that is the landing area.
Okay. Thank you. There's some confusion there. So then the second one, as far as with the water tank rate, you know, we have a rating right now in the town of Bethel of class 4/4Y. It used to be 4/8B. ISO changed it, but it helps to develop and supply insurance ratings for fire insurance and homeowners insurance for townspeople. They kind of take our town rating, which is based on many things such as the firefighting capability of the town, the volunteers, the training, our water supply, our dispatch center, et cetera. So water supply is a big part of it. So in areas that are outside of hydranted areas where we have city water or aquarium water, they give us a different rating, which obviously is it's a little harder to meet that rating because of the lack of, you know, piped water. So according to ISO's public classification, that the 30,000 gallon water tank would be the minimum required tank size in order to keep that 4Y rating for the town of Bethel in that, for that development and for that area of Shelley Road. Currently there's nothing there now. So it'll actually benefit the area as well. So that's what that 30,000 gallon water tank request is.
With all
Obviously
due
it's
respect,
bigger, but
with all due respect, it would not benefit the other residents because this is located on private property. And an easement would have to be provided by Mr. Draper to the fire department to use that tank. It is not like a cistern that is along a subdivision road, which is in an easemented area solely for the access of the fire department. This is on private property. Again, as I pointed out from Joe Versteeg, who I've worked with on many larger scale affordable, there is not a requirement for on-site water. And that's our position.
yeah, you're correct. By the fire and building code, it's not, but I believe, you know, again, and I'm not an expert on the 830G rules and regulations, but it is in the zoning regulations, and we usually require water tanks and developments of single family homes and residential areas for this. And again, most of those, the ones that we've done in the last couple of years have been all just literally single family homes, whether it's, you know, not duplexes or triplexes. And when you do the ISO calculation, it actually, a duplex or a triplex requires a lot more water, even though you do have a 1 hour rating. I understand that between units. It does change the fire flow. And again, we're just requesting that if we can get the 30,000 gallon tank, because if you ever done a tanker shuttle, it's a very tedious, arduous, long process to ship water from either a hydrant a few miles away or from a water tank somewhere else to have enough adequate water supply to fight a fire. So for our end of it, it would be
I'd like to make an
advantageous to have a
observation.
30,000 gallon tank.
Point understood. I'll make an observation. Back in the early 2000s, I did a 27 lot subdivision here in Southbury. There were 3 10,000 gallon cisterns put in because that was one per 10 lots basically in the Southbury code. In the intervening years between 2000 when the road was first put in and today, not one of those tanks have ever been used by the fire department to fight a fire. So and this is a 27 lot subdivision of fairly high-end single-family homes. We understand your comment. We provide 10,000. That's what we're going to provide.
Okay, so then on the last one, then I guess obviously it had to do with the width of the driveway, and you saw my comments after reviewing yours that you sent over the weekend, and I tried to get it in as quick as I could on Monday for you. Yeah, it's we can argue about it, but I just just state for the record, yeah, it's 20 feet is the minimum width. There's nothing in the code that says it can't be wider than 20 feet, and I see you made some improvements to it. And again, I just think just want to reiterate that it's whether you call it a fire apparatus road, a driveway, or roadway, if it was only a fire apparatus road only for fire apparatus to travel on to get there, if it was a secondary means for them to access the site, like I said in my memo, maybe 20 feet would probably be sufficient. But, some of those corners there and crossing the center line and whether or not there's going to be vehicles coming in the opposite direction in some of those blind corners, it just creates, I think, in our opinion, a serious safety hazard to access that site. It's not 100 feet off the road. I just try to compare it to other developments, and every development in the town of Bethel is different. Everyone has its challenges and different quirks about it. This is an 800 or 900 foot driveway up a pretty significant terrain. Which is a lot different than, a level development that's 100 foot long development that's, adjacent to a road. So I just want to make those comments that for that and just clarify those couple of points.
Okay. Comment understood. We stand by what we've done.
That's all I got, Pat.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Laura, can we move to your comments and any issues you feel that weren't addressed?
Sure. You ready? Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Can you speak just a little louder or turn up your volume?
How's that? Can you hear me?
We can hear you a little bit, yes.
How's that now?
Can the rest of the commission hear her well enough?
You hear me?
Yeah, you can hear.
I can hear.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, I'm Laura Vasile. I'm the Director of Health for the town of Bethel. I appreciated your patience. We have been actively working on the COVID pandemic response, and certainly that has been impacting our routine responses to construction applications and permits and things. If you will look at my November 9th detailed information to you, in summary, the application doesn't meet the public health code, and we have considerable concerns for health, public health, and that the building a reserve area does not have a suitable reserve and is required to have 100% suitable reserve. There's ledge less than 4 feet, and the public health code requires that you have 4 feet to ledge, and I detail that for you. Further, there's buildings C and D that have a swale through it, and that makes that reserve area unsuitable conditions as well. So I outlined to you that those are significant problems that are not in compliant with the code and do need to be addressed. I also outlined for you our concerns with the fact that we don't have enough soil testing in the primary for A, and in many areas on the lot. In one of the project engineers report, he talks about 39 deep holes. But in fact, for the 8 systems that are shown for 4 buildings, there are only approximately 10 holes. And there's like 1 hole per leaching system. That's not adequate for the health department to confirm that there's suitable soil conditions in those leaching areas. So that makes this not compliant with the public health code. And as I have done with you over the years, if something isn't compliant with the health code, I have cited, just as it's noted on page 35 of the technical standards that I don't recommend approval. I had recommended that the project engineer do groundwater monitoring and look at this further with the health department. They had chosen not to do that. That's unfortunate. I wish we had, because I think we'd have enough information to make concrete comments, and I've detailed that. I've also gone on, those are the very, very important issues for the health department. The state health department has advised us that multifamily dwellings are one tier up from residential development. This is a complex for about 27 people, and suitable conditions in primary and reserve septic areas is very important. Lastly, I did mention to you that I think that somebody should be confirming that they can work in an easement. We don't ever say something's acceptable if we understand that you can construct in that easement. The community water system component should be on the plan so we could look at the separating distances with the project engineer and make sure that they comply. And I am concerned that the pocket pond could receive whatever kind of treatment the driveway receives. And if that's salt, we already have an issue with DEP, and we don't want to have any concerns with the well that's on the adjacent property or any down gradient. I've given you far more details in the submissions. The attachments have nothing to that were negative. The attachments that I gave you is Septic 101, which explains that the site evaluation is critically important and that the soil characteristics and understanding that you have suitable conditions is really important. And with that, if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Laura. All right, Brian Baker, Civil 1.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yes, for the record, Brian Baker with Civil 1, Director of Engineering, also certified professional in stormwater quality, certified professional in erosion and sediment control. We were asked by the health department to look specifically at the water supply and septic issues related to the project. So we'll just briefly touch on those. Laura hit a lot of the highlights, but first off, we go back to the original plans for this were submitted back in October 2019. It looks like that was the date on the original plans. And then a letter from Mr. Trinkus in July of 2020. He indicated that his opinion was the state health department had no jurisdiction over this and everything was under the jurisdiction of the Bethel Health Department. The first thing we looked at was the number of people being supplied by the water supply and noted that 25 people or more, in our opinion, based on the regulations, require a community water system under the jurisdiction of the state health department. So after that, subsequently, they did apply for a screening form, and indeed that is the case. So this will have to have be under the jurisdiction of state health department for water supply, which there are a number of criteria they'll have to go through and hoops to jump through. It's a significant amount of time and expense to set that up. Having said that, it's not something that has to be done. That setup does not have to be done prior to a planning and zoning approval. Our real concern comes in with the number one, discrepancies between the test hole logs between what Mr. Trinkus has logged and what the health department had logged and marked up. And I was honestly a bit surprised that you had an application that had gone on this long with this many revisions, and not even the first basis of a design is to understand what the soils are, what the limitations are, and to have agreement between the health department and the consulting engineer as to what what the soils are. That was never done. Steve had mentioned, Mr. Trinkus had mentioned 37, I believe, test holes that were done on the site. Of that, if you look at the logs that were done the day after, or the markup from the health department, there's differences in 13 of those logs where they recognize groundwater at elevations that were not indicated on Mr. Trinkus's plan. So that's a third of the test holes that were done. There are discrepancies between the two logs. So clearly those should have been ironed out early on. I know the health department had asked for groundwater monitoring to be done through the spring. These test holes were done in 2017. Monitoring is typically done in the spring during high groundwater times. So you had 2018, 2019, or 2020 to gather that data, and that was never done. If I could ask to share the screen for a minute, I just want to go over the couple of the specific areas where I think additional test holes are warranted and the discrepancies have to be resolved. So can I get permission to do that?
Screen sharing is enabled, Mr. Baker.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so this is the 11/6/20 plan set recently submitted by the applicant. We won't go into detail over all the systems, but highlight some of the areas of concern that we have where we do not believe that the applicant meets the technical standards of the health code because there's not adequate data or there are discrepancies in the data. First off, typically the standard is to do at least two tests in a primary area and one test in a reserve area, one deep test in a reserve area at a minimum. For longer systems, additional tests are certainly warranted. If you look at test hole septic system B here, there's one test hole in the system, the primary system area. The closest other test hole is this test hole 33D, which Mr. Trinkus's log does not mention anything about groundwater or modeling in this hole, whereas the health department notes that there was water at 8 inches in this hole. Yeah, you need 18 inches minimum for a suitable above ground water for suitable septic system. This hole is within 25 feet of the end of this primary system. There certainly needs to be some clarification as to why there was no groundwater or modeling mentioned in this hole. Or again, to clarify, and this was done 3 years ago, 3 years plus the testing, so nobody's going to remember what that hole looked like now. There needs to be additional testing to prove out that there is not high groundwater or limitations in this area. Number two, you want to test hole 25 feet down gradient of the system because that's the receiving soils. There is no test hole 25 feet down gradient here. The reason that adequate test holes are really important on this site is because you have such variation in ledge and groundwater from one test hole to another. Ledgy sites, the ledge can come up, can come down, and to not have adequate test holes, then if you don't have adequate test holes, you cannot just assume that you have adequate soils and do test holes after the fact. Test holes after the fact, yet in some cases those are done. Those are done in situations where you've tested on a lot, you have consistent results in the area. Let's say you have all sand and gravel throughout the entire site, and maybe you're shy one test hole. Sure, the health department will say we could do a confirmation test hole on that, prior to construction and make an adjustment if need be. The testing here is sorely lacking, and you cannot say, oh, we'll just do it after approvals or after the fact. Testing needs to be done now to make sure that the area does have adequate soils for septic suitability. Test hole C, there's no down gradient test hole 25 feet below the system. Test hole D, there's no down gradient test hole 25 feet below the system. If we go to sheet 7, here you have a run of trench for the primary for system A. That's a 100-foot run of trench. the test hole 17D here has ledge at 48 inches. So that's the minimum acceptable. 47 inches is not suitable. 48 inches is. So they have one test hole here that's just suitable, the bare minimum. And then you have a 75-foot run here with no deep test hole. This P6 is a shallow perk test hole. It's not a deep hole. So certainly warranted another test hole with a variation in ledge in this area for system A. And I think one of the most important parts that Laura had mentioned, and I feel the need to reiterate, is you're showing a reserve area for system A here with test holes 23D and 24D. Now 23D has
ledge at 36.
Yeah, 24D ledge at 45 inches, 23D ledge at 36 inches. Those are unsuitable holes. You need to have at least 48 inches to ledge. In the health code, so let me share something here. So here's the technical standards for public health code. So these are the rules that we go by, okay? If you look at page 35 here, actually, let me open it up in a different browser. So these are the rules that govern, that Laura has to apply and the health department has to apply when reviewing a septic system. Right here in black and white on page 35 of the code, here, unsuitable soil conditions include areas with less than 18 inches above groundwater or less than 4 feet to ledge. New SSDSs, that's septic systems constructed in areas where there's no definite schedule for the extension of public sewers within 5 years, shall be laid out in such a manner to provide an acceptable reserve leaching area of suitable soil, or in the case of existing single-family residential building lots, potentially suitable soil. This is not a single-family development. This is a multifamily development. They need to meet 48 inches to ledge. By their own test hole records, they do not, and therefore septic area A does not, area A does not have a viable reserve system. So it's our opinion, and this is myself and Kurt Jones, the owner of Civil One, also did a detailed review of the project with me. That's why he signed the first review letter that we submitted. Kurt and I both signed the second review letter. You know, Civil One does have the advantage of having 3 professional engineers on staff, the combined over 70 years of experience looking at this type of stuff. And it's our opinion that there's inadequate data to prove out these septic areas, which in turn provides us a significant potential for a health hazard with these septic areas. And just to go back just briefly to Laura's comment on the septic area and the easement, access easement. So this is the access easement that goes up to the open space. You can see the septic areas would have to be constructed in that because the site is so constrained because you have wetlands immediately to the left here. So you have the septic, this grading, these 2-to-1 slopes would be in the easement. So that is certainly a situation where walking up this or providing access to this, now you have 2-to-1 slopes to walk up, side slopes. So those would be located in the easement also. Again, not necessarily a health and safety issue, but you know, when you're looking at that there is an access easement for pedestrian access up to the side there, installation and grading, and that will make access to that more difficult.
Brian, could you keep that on?
Sure.
So if you look at this, and Brian, if you would do your arrow, where the swales, there's 3 swales. The swales are where they make soil cuts, and maybe Brian can explain it more. we spoke with the state health department because multifamily dwellings have to have 100% suitable reserve. And the Bethel Health Department was advised, as I wrote to you, that the reserve area that cuts through Building C reserve and through area above would not make that area for that it's the Building C reserve with the swale through it makes that reserve area unsuitable. That's an unsuitable condition to have a swale, one down, Brian, where 37D is, where the arrows are is a swale.
Yeah.
That swale that cuts through reserve area, let me see, I have my plan right here. It cuts through swale through 2 reserve areas. It's above 1 and it's impacting, it's making that reserve, Building C reserve area has a swale shown cutting through it and it makes it unsuitable per the code. And then it's, when you do a swale, there's such a high risk of compaction and impact on the natural soils that the state health department advised the health department to not consider that acceptable.
Understood. And I agree with that. Yeah, so that in basic summary, again, it's our opinion based upon the testing that was done, the discrepancies, the lack of additional testing that is needed, and the fact that there is no suitable reserve area for System B, that the plan as presented does not meet the technical standards of the health code.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on. Beth, is there anything that you want to present from correspondence?
I just would like to, I just have a few comments in regards to the application. First of all, I would say that this is a first for me to be accused as a member of the land use department being discriminating. I think it's more so the first in my life that anyone has ever accused us of this. I pride ourselves on the decisions that we make. The only items I feel that it's important to address you as a commission members are comments in regards to a variance that was denied to Mr. Draper twice, as a matter of fact, as he is correct in stating. That variance was denied. It was part of the particular lot in question. It was approved in 2005. It was part of a 5-lot subdivision for one single building lot. I would advise the commission to go back to the file pertaining to that. It is in the record. And as a matter of fact, there are also comments in there from the fire marshal in regards to the variance with concerns of safety on the driveway. Now, remember, that was a variance of a previously approved subdivision lot, approved subdivided lot under your current subdivision regulations pertaining to driveways, grades, rear lots. The accusation of the other application pertaining to 29 Benedict Road. 29 Benedict Road was a parcel of property that had been in existence prior to the zoning regulations. So you're dealing with raw, undeveloped land, number one. Number two, it wasn't walking in the building, getting an approval immediately. It was almost close to a year of working with the developer and the property owner. And that's the key, working with, taking all the options involved with a subdivision, with a road, with 10 or 12 lots that were approved originally with a through road. But more importantly, the variance was based on topography and the wetlands. In the case of Mr. Draper, back in 2013 or 14, whatever it was, the reason for the variance was, number one, due to, as he said this evening, due to the financial status of the world. And number two, if I do not have the file in front of me, he called the regulations arbitrary. So there is a distinct difference between the two. In regards to the commission being discriminating, I'm sorry, I have to look at the record. I look at what Mr. Draper has been able to do in the town of Bethel over the last 20 years, whether it be subdivisions, building homes, any type of construction. I look at what you did as a commission in regards to 49 Taylor Avenue. I think you all recall the original approval was for 9 units. Mr. Draper had issues and unbeknownst expenses involving bringing in the utility lines. He came back. He asked for a revision, and guess what? You gave it to him. In regards to 91 Worcester Street, that 830G application, we've gone back and forth 2 or 3 times. And what were we doing? There was the feasibility of possibly increasing the unit size. The commission approved that. In regards to 91 Worcester Street, when Mr. Draper could not decide if he was going to go with 3 units or 6 units or back and forth, the department talked to him, broke the project into 2 phases so he could get certificates of occupancy for the first phase of the project. That was our initiative in order to keep his project going. So I just, based on those few points that I just want to make, that I do believe that the land use department is not discriminating, that the land use department uses their best judgment in any decision that they make. And the commission also. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
That's in regards to Mr. Draper's comments. I just want to say you just also had a very good discussion on septic systems and the development, the importance of getting it right. I think that it's important just to say, when you look at a site in an area that is not serviced by sewer and water, think about it. The most important thing on the site is, where is the septic system going to go? Because as far as I know, and what I know about the Department of Health, the health code pertaining to septics, you have to know where that's going to go, because the state of Connecticut health regulations are so precise as to, well, if you're going to put your septic here, the house goes there, the stormwater system goes there, drainage, driveways, things of that nature. And you have to have that right before you can do anything else with the piece of property. I believe it's very basic and it's common sense. In regards to the changes that were made pertaining to the driveway, I think we're very appreciative of them. I do have some concerns that we should have that looked at, but I do believe that we do have that option. If we close the public hearing tonight, we can ask our experts, Mike Vellante, to look at it again. Tom has made very clear his statements this evening, and Todd Ritchie from Malone and McBroom. That's all I have for the moment.
Thank you, Beth. All right, based on what we've heard, I'll ask again, are there any public comments that want to be made?
Public comments from the general public, Pat, are you talking about?
The general public, yeah.
Okay. David, you want to go through the hand raising just one more time, please?
Yes, I'll be quick as well. There is a toolbar at the bottom of the Zoom program. There is a button you can click, participants. It's an icon with 2 persons and a number. There is a toolbar that would open up on the right-hand side of your screen with a list of participants in tonight's meeting. You would click next to your name, whatever your name is. And there's an option for you to raise your hand. That is how we would recognize that you have public comments to offer for this application. At
Are you
this
guys able to
time-
hear me? This is Brendan O'Mara. There's no hand raise feature, but if you can hear me on the mute, I'd like to speak, please.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. O'Mara.
All right, thank you. For the record, Brendan O'Mara. My wife and I, our family, are the adjacent property owners. I just have to say I'm a little concerned that this will be probably the third or fourth straight hearing where we've been offered the chance to comment or question. Most frequently, I get some answers, but they're all from the applicant's side. I would really like some answers from a combination of departments for the town, and I will try to keep them brief. I know a lot of people have been speaking for a while. Let me start first with the driveway or road. I have no idea what's difference it is to the you or the town or the construction methods if it's a road or a driveway. I'm just saying, if you walk it and look at the stakes right now, you can see that the entrance to this driveway is at least 40 or 50 feet wide, far wider than Shelley Road itself. As far as sightlines go, I am not sure what's required, but let's say this development goes in and I want to plant an evergreen windbreak to screen this off for my property. Does that change things? Because maybe only one car edging out onto the road will be able to see to the south. And even that's even including, the town easement and whatnot, because trees grow and branches grow. And, I don't know if this has any implication on what I'm allowed to do with my property. I have put a letter into public record a couple of months ago, actually, that talks about things like blasting on the site, some concerns the health department had with the kind of stone formations there that can contaminate water systems. I too have asked about a pocket pond that seems to be about 50 to 60 feet away from our well. And I've also heard the applicant's engineer talk about compacted clay and hydrocarbon infiltration and how he could take care of that. But let's face it, hydrocarbons aren't the only things coming off of cars. And I was glad that the mention of salt runoff and things like that were covered as well. Ms. Cavagna also just talked about looking, just taking, it sounded like a common sense look at the property. And when you look at the amount of septic systems uphill on highly rocky, possibly fractured ground, almost in a direct line uphill of our well, with swales and other things drawn on the engineering plans, I don't understand how that's not a health and safety concern. I know Mr. Marcus, Attorney Marcus, had said he's covered everything and hasn't really heard a safety concern. And perhaps that's because this development isn't near his well or his water system. But I got to tell you, with a pocket pond, with the amount of construction, there's going to be some hammering or blasting with several septic systems that appear to also encroach on the right of way, that these things are very close to having direct effect on two sides to my well. And I guess it boils down to this question, or a couple of questions, all right? My well also is at 140 feet, give or take. We could look it up. I'm sure there's a permit still on file with the town. If we drill a public water system near that, question one, what guarantee do I have that my well doesn't run dry because of this? If they do blasting, what guarantee do I have that our well is not contaminated? What guarantee do I have that the pocket pond is designed so perfectly? And even if it's designed perfectly, Mr. Trinkus is not out there doing the installation. So how do I know this is not going to have any kind of impact on our well? What kind of recourse do we have if my water system gets contaminated from this project? Could be during construction, could be a year from then. But who's responsible for that? Who helps me fix that? And can either the applicant or the town, anyone in the town, tell me that there is zero health and safety risk to our water, our family's health based on these designs? And, I just don't understand how just looking at these objectively, you can kind of make that guarantee given the landscape, the topography. I understand that some things seem to meet what's based on, radius and distance away from this and that, but it sure seems like there's a lot of risk specifically to one family in this. And notice I haven't mentioned anything about how these things look or what it's going to do to the property value. I'm talking about health and safety of my family, because water is the most important resource we have at our house. And, if we don't want to be sitting here drinking things that have been contaminated or worse yet, trying to redesign a water system that we're going to have to fit in a different place once something is messed up. This is not I cut your tree down and I'm going to plant another one. This is, if our water system gets messed up, it is a big deal. And I've yet to hear anyone who can tell me what I do if it happens, tell me who guarantees it's going to work, and also tell me they don't feel like this is in the least bit of health concern. So for those things, I'm going to wrap my comments, and thank you for the time to the commission.
Thank you, Mr. O'Mara. Okay, we'll wait till all the comments are in to address them. David, do we have anybody else?
I saw Gloria Whaley had her hand raised. She has since rescinded her hand raise. I'm not sure if
Okay.
she has public comment she wants to offer.
All right, well, then we'll move out to respond to Mr. O'Mara's questions. What I'd like to do, if I may, and Beth, if you agree, I'd like to go back around with Laura Bastille, because Laura was very clear on the pocket pond. And Laura, looking at this question for Mr. O'Mara, can you provide any responses?
Well, I think that when you look at my November 9th letter, I am suggesting that the applicant and or the commissions work with the DEP and look at the liner and the standard practice. DEP did say, as the project engineer did, that pocket ponds are a stormwater design, but it is critically important that the protection of the well in vicinity of it be done, and that's in my letter to you. So I do believe that work could have been done, and I think work can still be done with the DEP to make sure that they are not concerned about anything that would be de-icing product or anything on the driveway through winters that by travel and surface and groundwater could move in that direction. And that is in my letter.
Yes, thank you, Laura. All right, Mr. Trinkus, was there anything that you wanted to respond to in Mr. O'Mara's questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Pat. First off, regarding the pocket pond, we've been through this multiple times. If bedrock is encountered, two things happen. If it cannot be hammered or ripped out and has to be blasted, that is under the jurisdiction of your Fire Marshal Tom Galliford. And anytime you are generally close to any other adjacent property that you don't own, you ask permission to do a pre-blast survey of the other person's property to make sure there's no cracks in sheetrock walls and things. You can put a seismograph on the well and you can blast in such a fashion, if it's required, to basically not have any impact on the well. We had a project in Woodbury years ago where an adjacent owner to a road extension right-of-way put his well 3 feet off the right-of-way. And we hit shallow bedrock for our drainage, and we put a seismograph on the well, and we were blasting, and there was zero registering on the seismograph. It's all how the work is done. So if there is rock encountered, it's going to be removed a foot below the bottom of the pond, and as it's noted on the plan, a clay barrier will be put in to seal the pond, because you do not want a pocket pond to infiltrate. It is a permanent pool of water, period. Regarding de-icing agents, unfortunately, towns and everybody else, thanks to the state, started eliminating sand, which is easily trappable by many stormwater practices, and using the brine solutions of mostly calcium chloride. And chloride stays in the environment. The only way to reduce it is to mitigate what you put down. It stays in solution, stays in the soil, but with the pocket pond, it will not go into the soil because we're going to have a clay barrier. So it will be discharged to the drainage system. The town of Bethel, my hometown, Southbury, routinely use de-icing agents all over the place. It goes into the drainage system and into wetlands throughout the town. It is an unfortunate problem, but it is not unique to this particular site. Regarding the pedestrian easement, the easement area is owned by the applicant. It is a pedestrian easement. And well, Mr. Baker pointed out that some of the grading for the septics within the easement are 2 to 1. And it kind of fails to acknowledge the fact that the slope coming up from Shelley Road at the maybe a couple hundred feet in from Shelley Road is up a ledge escarpment that is probably running close to a 45% slope, almost a one-on-one. And if people can walk up that, they can walk across a 2-to-1 slope. Again, it's pedestrian access. It is no other access beyond that. Regarding the quote unquote swales for the reserve system, the reserve system, and this came from the Selleck Health Department many years ago, is only there during the active construction. If the primary system is somehow disturbed or otherwise rendered unsuitable, then the reserve system becomes the primary system. Once the code compliant system, i.e. the primary system, has been constructed, the reserve is no longer needed, and that is per the State Health Department. What is shown on the swale is what is commonly known as a simple grade to drain swale. It is a little surface grading to direct the water from uphill of the septic around the system so that you don't have water flowing across what is basically a sand pile where it will infiltrate. It is a common practice used in many systems. The fact that it goes through the reserve is irrelevant because once the primary system is built, the reserve no longer needs to be on site. When Mr. Baker was showing you the technical standards, he did not quite go far enough in that section where it states that, well, 4 foot is required, 2 foot of that must be native soil. That was the next line down. In the reserve area for system A, 36 inches is greater than 24. The primary system must have 48 inches. If we had less there, we'd have to pre-fill it. And I've done that on systems in Ridgefield back in the middle 2000s on projects where we had shallow bedrock at 2 feet. We designed the system, the contractor filled it with a big sand pile, and then it was approved by health. That same requirement is not applicable to the reserve system as far as that goes. Again, the pocket pond, with all due respect to the health department, is not a health department issue. Nor is it a DEP issue. We got through the Wetlands Commission on the second application for this pocket pond. This stays with local jurisdiction. Furthermore, the site does not have more than 5 acres of total site disturbance, so it will not be subject to a Connecticut general permit with the discharge of stormwater from construction and dewatering activities. This is designed fully in compliance with the DEP 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual to address non-point source load runoff as far as that goes. Wells, any well in the town of Bethel, at least in recent years, has to be drilled into bedrock. You can't have a shallow soil-based well. There are many probably existing in Reading, Bethel, and a few other towns, but they are no longer suitable. One of my clients in Bethlehem bought a cottage that had a hand-dug well. She has to drill a new well. The health department will not let her use a hand-dug well for potable water. There is very little interchange between the soil above the bedrock and the bedrock itself as far as groundwater movement, particularly in clayey soils where you have hard pan layers and the shallow groundwater follows the hard pan layer down to where it bleeds out. So again, as long as Mr. O'Meara permits it, if there is blasting needed, we'll put a seismograph on as well and do a pre-blast survey to ensure that there is no harm. My client doesn't want to buy him a new well, so we want to make sure that any work done on the site will be done not to cause any impacts on adjacent properties. As design engineer, I will not be involved in the direct construction of the project, but I will be overseeing it to ensure that it is built per my plan. This applied to the stormwater management systems at 49 Taylor Avenue, 91 Worcester Street, and any other project that I have designed. We are responsible as design professionals, and we need to go back and make sure they're built the right way and that the client is following the plans that we have designed as far as that goes. As I pointed out in my memo, we're demonstrating suitability, which is clearly done. There have been many subdivisions with a similar level of test holes in the systems, and prior to final design and permitting, additional test holes are done. It is not unusual and actually is a very common practice as far as that goes. I stand on the information we submitted over the weekend regarding the septic systems. And unless there's additional comments, I think that addresses the big picture items. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Laura, can I just ask one question?
Please.
In your comment about the pocket pond, you really feel strongly that we should have Connecticut DEEP expert comments. Do you still stand by that?
Well, I had forwarded it to them, yes, because the Director of Health is here to protect public health.
Okay.
So protecting public health is protecting drinking water, groundwater, and prevention of nuisances. So DEP did weigh in finally today. And again, they don't act as an engineer, but they understood that the town of Bethel and other towns, as the project engineer just said, have had very significant public health problems with sodium salt affecting drinking water wells. And we have a big case with DEP right now. So I do think, whether I asked DEP if there was a consultant that maybe the commission could work with that could assist, but I absolutely feel that this liner has to be meticulously done. One of the things that many of the professionals on tonight hopefully have spent their life doing, at least I have, is protecting the groundwater of the state so people could drink their water and it meets the public health code. So that item, as I wrote, is in there and needs to be addressed. If you don't mind, I wanted to just come full circle with the point about the septics. I did listen to the last hearing and I did contact the Department of Public Health, and they have advised me that a multifamily dwelling project is not a subdivision. It's not a single lot development. It is a different tier above that. And that this site has shallow groundwater, as Mr. O'Meara has shared, and shallow ledge that is very, there are site limitations that warrant being looked at. And I did ask the applicant to look at them. This isn't unusual. And on page 35 that Brian showed you, the Director of Health is requested to advise you or anyone not to create something until it's been demonstrated that suitable soils exist. For a multifamily dwelling, it is not 2 feet. The State Health Department has advised me, as the Director of Health for the town of Bethel, there should be 4 feet of suitable soil available to make us to be considered suitable soil conditions. That doesn't exist in a reserve area, and the swale in a reserve area also makes that other one unsuitable. But I have to emphasize that it's very important that we understand where these other septics are. Is the ledge at 2 feet? Is the ledge at 3 feet? If the ledge is at 2 or 3 feet, that knocks that row right out. Well, that makes it move. It's unsuitable soil conditions. And I can't tell you or recommend that you move forward on that until that's investigated.
Thank you, Laura.
Pat, maybe Brian Baker wants, since we're on that subject, Brian may want to add something.
Yeah, Laura basically stole my thunder there, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
where Mr. Trinkus says, oh, you only need 2 feet because it's potentially suitable soil. That's not the way the regulation reads. He's incorrect. That is for a single family development. For a existing single family lot, yes, you can have 2 feet of existing native soil and bring in 2 feet of fill to make up the difference. For a multifamily development, you need 48 inches of native soil on site for the area to be suitable. And he does not have that in that reserve area for System A. So that statement is incorrect. System A does not have an adequate reserve area. So that's just wanted to clarify that point in particular.
Thank you.
Pat, you may want to, if Chuck needs anything to clarify or if he has anything to add.
No, I don't have anything to add right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to commissioners. Kitty. Kitty?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I don't. No. I think our experts have said a lot. I think Mr. Trinkus and Mr. Marcus have said a lot. And I take great umbrage to what Mr. Trinkus and Mr. Marcus implied about this commission. I've been on this commission 27 years, and I have never, ever looked at an application from the point of view that they have stated this commission has. And I'm sorry, but I just,
Excuse me, Kitty, that didn't come from Attorney Marcus or Mr. Trinkus. That was the statement that was made by the property owner.
but Mr. Marcus did say something to that effect, that there was a bias. He felt there was a bias. So
You did, Beth.
that's fine. I'm sorry. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. John,
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Kenny,
I would have a comment to make, but no questions, and I'm going to be quiet.
okay. Ken. Ken, I think you're on mute.
Yes, he is.
Sorry. I just had one question on the reserve area on the septic systems. Perhaps someone could address it. Is it never used once the primary system is up and being utilized? It's never used ever again?
Oh, that's a good question.
Pat, let me address this because this came directly from Ridgefield back in the mid-90s when people often finished rooms over garages after the house was built. They started requiring those rooms, even if there wasn't a bathroom nearby, to be considered a bedroom because somebody could do that. And Barbara, who was a sanitarian in Ridgefield at the time, had a project come in that they wanted to put a pool where the reserve had previously been shown on the plan. And as the primary had already been installed, Frank Schaub, who was the director of health at the time at the State Health Department, told the Ridgefield Health Department, and Barbara shared it with all of the engineers that worked in Ridgefield at the time, that once you had a code compliant system, i.e. the primary, you could put the pool right where the reserve is, as long as that pool was 25 feet from the primary system. So the reserve is only there during active construction in the event the primary system gets adversely impacted by construction. I've had clients over the years move a house that went into the primary and the reserve, the primary system had to move where the reserve was, and there was no other reserve. There was just one code compliant system. That is all it is required. So once you get the primary system installed, the reserve effectively disappears. It is no longer required.
Thank you.
So Ken, actually, that's not what Mr. Schaub said. I could submit his circular letter of July 22nd, 1999, and I quote, "It is important that we protect public health, our ground and surface water supplies, and the value of properties in Connecticut by performing effective enforcement of B100A," which Steve, the project engineer, is somewhat quoting. "It would be ideal if we could find code complying areas on every property in order to let property owners meet their future demands for pools, additions, tennis courts, structures. Where code complying areas are not possible, the preservation of potential repair areas is very important and is helpful to property owners in determining the extent of non-change of use or not increasing flows on their property." So in fact, what the state of Connecticut public health engineers did, and I could submit these circular letters, is they tried to find a way to give people accessory structures and to give them some increase in non-flow items. But what we've learned is, I submitted one case to you from Brookfield. I've spent 32 years with residents on properties where, when they had no suitable septic reserve, had to put their whole pension into fixing their septic repair, or so much money that they would be crying in my office. So even though there is some technical allowances, if your property requires suitable soil conditions and a place for you to have a septic system, My hope is that you have that on your land if you are not near public sewer.
Thank you, Laura. Bob Legnard.
I have a question. At our last meeting, it was mentioned that they're gonna have a walkway down the driveway,
Right, yes.
and that was to be gravel.
Yes, Steve Trinkus, Bob. Yes, along the left-hand side of the driveway, as you go up, there is a shoulder area. It will be a 4-foot gravel walkway from Shelley Road all the way up to basically where the dumpster is.
Yep.
What's gonna hold that in place?
It's a level shelf. It's a shoulder neck above the curb line.
Nothing on that.
So on the
property.
lower end, it's above the retaining wall. Other parts of it, the retaining wall actually will be higher than that, but it's 6 inches above the grade of the driveway. It's basically the top of the curb along the driveway, and it's 4 foot wide.
I understand what's gonna keep it out of the driveway, but what's gonna keep it from going down the hill?
It's dead level. It's level from
Nothing in that property is level, Steve.
yeah, okay, the walkway mirrors the slope of the driveway. Yes, it's 6 inches higher than the driveway and it mirrors the slope of the driveway. However, it is compacted gravel, and because of the retaining walls and or swales above the retaining walls, no water is except what falls on it is going to run down it. Typically, the shoulder has a very slight pitch along the lines of 1/8 to 1/4 inch per foot from the back of the shoulder towards the curb. So the water simply drains across it onto the driveway and goes down the catch basin. You can't really see it in the field, but that's the way sidewalks are designed to pitch the water out. So it's not going to flow down the gravel. It's going to constantly shed off to the catch basins on the driveway.
Will that be ADA compliant?
No, it will not.
Okay, that's enough.
Thank you, Bob. Rich.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any questions. I have just a couple concerns. I mean, man, pissing contests are no fun to listen to. So when you get a bunch of engineers in the room, I see Neil laughing, but you kind of fall into this too, buddy. Like nothing's getting solved here. To call back to what Mr. O'Mara said, I mean, I think Steve might have taken a little bit of responsibility for what could potentially happen to as well in his statements. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the work that everybody's put into this. But like when the public is asking questions, answer them. Okay? Answer them as a human, not an engineer. Okay? To listen to you guys go back and forth, nobody knows what you're talking about. Doesn't make any sense. It's illogical for most people. Okay? Answer it in a regular way. Neil, you can help do this. This is what you do. You're an attorney. Okay? You're the king of wordsmithing, right? True or false? Answer that question. You are. You're off mute. Yeah? You're good at it. Help. Okay? Help your client. Help your client answer in a sensible way. Otherwise, we get Steve who gets upset and he gets sensitive and he argues with Laura or he argues with Brian or whoever. And it's not productive. Okay? And now, again, here we are in our third run at this, or fourth or 10th, or who knows at this point. And very little has been answered to the public. Very little is clear. Okay? So like when you show up to these things, and this goes to Tim too, I haven't been on this commission long enough to be called discriminatory or whatever. But like at the end of the day, show up prepared. This is politics, man. Show up ready to work. Okay, it's not easy. Nobody's going to hand you anything. Come in here with all the information you know you already need, and you know it because you've done 8 million of these developments. Okay, so that we can have a conversation about how to move forward. Because we don't. Anybody that's read 830G knows that we don't have a lot of recourse. We want to work. Okay, we want to workshop this. We want to get to an agreement. Okay, everybody does. The public, the commission, the applicant. We're here to work together. Okay, this is very adversarial and it's exhausting. So that's my spiel. Take it for what it's worth. But I would encourage you all to either take a Toastmasters course or a political science course and learn how to work in a group.
Thank you, Rich. Linda. Linda, you're on mute.
Sorry, there we go. Okay, I've listened to the health issues, and those are of concern to me. I've listened to Mr. Draper's obvious concerns, and I think that there is no, there's no, oh, I don't even know how to express this, but every application is standing on its own merit, not to say, okay, this, and this happened before, and everybody's against me. That's not the way this is working. So I think that that's very unfair, although I certainly do understand, the time and effort and money that the applicants are putting into all this. But to say that there's some sort of bias against any one person, I think is very unfair. I would just like to get the answers to the real issues, which are the health and safety issues, and move on from there.
Yes, Penny.
I want to follow, if it's okay, I want to follow up with some questions.
Sure.
Okay. I want to go back to Bob Legnard. Not that this walkway is not ADA compliant. Is that the case? Did I hear correctly? That was number one. And I want to respond with my question would be, really? Question mark. I do not recall who said it. We've heard a lot of conversation. The neighbors don't like this housing, and there's nothing you can do about it. Again, my question is, really? So I don't really expect an answer to that second question, but I would like an answer to the ADA non-compliance.
Penny, Steve Trinkus, it doesn't have to be ADA compliant.
And why is that?
It simply does not have to be.
I understand. I just asked why that is.
Penny, can I try that? Because I'm going to take Rich Tibbetts.
Boy.
Rich Tibbetts' suggestion. I'm going to try to explain Steve Trinkus in non-engineering terms. Steve, bear with me.
I will.
The ADA requirement deals with a certain grade. So, for example, in my office building on Deer Hill Avenue, when we did renovations, we needed to have a ramp that was ADA compliant. It had to have a certain grade to it. Sidewalks don't have to be ADA compliant because they run along roads which are too steep. So basically, in order to make sidewalks, this is what we're talking about, it's a gravel walkway. In order to make it ADA compliant anywhere in the town of Bethel, all of your roadways would have to have very minimal grade that basically you could manipulate with a wheelchair without a motor on it. So that's why Steve is saying it's not required. The ADA does not require walkways to be to meet their standards.
Right.
The reason for it is we can't do it. You guys can't do it.
Okay, Neil, thank you for that, which leads me to another follow-up question. You're referring to this as a sidewalk, but we have been told numerous times that this is a driveway leading to. So we're not talking about sidewalk ADA compliance. We're talking about something completely different.
Correct.
We're talking about, in effect, a public use of a property, the 8-30G, that will not be accessible for walking by somebody either in a wheelchair or similarly visibly disabled or not visibly disabled. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding that, if that's the case, right?
Yeah. The driveway regulations of the town of Bethel, and for that matter, of all the towns in this area, do not require that they be built to ADA accessibility standards. So clearly, there's no expectation that you can necessarily take a wheelchair up a 12% grade driveway. That's too steep. The sidewalks normally are not required for driveways. Very few driveways in Bethel have sidewalks running next to them. During the course of our review, the request was made, how do kids come down this steep driveway, 12%, with safely? So if they have to get the school bus at the bottom. So what we did is we designed a walkway out of, again, gravel. It'll be a material that, as Steve said, it's a processed material that's maybe made of tailings and compressed in. It's permeable, so water is meant to run through it, but it is not asphalt itself or concrete. But it's a walkway nonetheless. So that's what we've designed. And by the way, your regulations do not require driveways to have sidewalks. So it actually, not all roadways have sidewalks, but some of them do. Depends on where you are in town.
Right. So I appreciate all of that. Thank you. But I do have that follow-up question. Just because something isn't required doesn't mean that it is not appropriate. And that's just a comment. And I just want to leave with that question, which I do not expect an answer on, which is, quote, "The neighbors don't like this housing and there's nothing you can do about it." And my question, which I do not expect an answer, is, really? Really? So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Penny, can I just, Pat, could I just
Yes, of
talk about
course.
the sidewalk thing? Because I do feel that I've inherited Dick Shannon's sidewalk crown from my own experiences over the years. I can tell you just based on my own experience, this isn't a sidewalk. This is a gravel path.
The pathway.
Okay, it's an attempt by the applicant to address safety issues that you had concerning pedestrians going up and down the driveway. And the question is, does this answer it? But it is not a sidewalk.
And just to say, Beth, it was my question, and I did appreciate the walkway. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Rob Wallace.
I don't have any questions beyond what our experts have mentioned.
Can you turn up your volume, Rob?
Can't hear you.
Yeah, I had to.
If you listen closely, you can hear him.
Any better?
Well, go ahead.
Okay. I don't have any questions beyond those that have been raised by our experts tonight, which I would expect that the applicants are going to answer. I'm biting my tongue about a more direct question to the applicants, and I think it's better that I not make a comment. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions, but yeah, I just want to thank everybody for our subject matter experts and all the information that came into us this evening. Beth, is there anything you want to add?
Not at this point, no.
Kitty, if I could just beg your indulgence for 1 minute. There are a couple of comments that were made by your experts that I'd just like to address very quickly.
Sure.
First of all, I think that Tom Galliford's comments were very positive, and quite honestly, his not only were they positive, he was honest about the 30,000 gallon tank. I now at least understand where it comes from, and if it's interesting. And he did say it's not really a health or safety issue. He's just requesting it. And I appreciate the fact that that's an issue because if neighbors could reduce their fire insurance by putting water in their neighborhood and making, they ought to contribute to that and all around town, seriously. That I thought was a good comment. But I sense that he made one comment about, he was concerned at the end. He was worried about blind corners. Hopefully, if he goes and looks at the drawing now, he'll realize that Steve actually took out the blind corner. But I hope he comes to that conclusion. The rest of, Laura's comments, and I'm going to couple that with Brian Baker's comments in what Rich has said is a very illuminating discussion of septic system requirements. At the end of the day, the requirement that of a septic system goes, that's code compliant, is just basic. You don't, so what I would suggest is I'm actually encouraged by the fact that Laura has ended her statement with ended her presentation with a statement that says she has made recommendations. And the answer is, that's what we need to do. We need to have recommendations. And to the extent that you want to resolve the septic problem, you should do it with a very simple condition of approval. But that's what 8-30G says, that if there's a public health or safety issue, can it be overcome by reasonable conditions of approval? And this is just basic, that one condition could be that prior to taking out any permits for construction of buildings, that septic permits have to be issued. And then there'll be no question that the septic systems are compliant. It's a simple way to do it. The other thing, of course, is if there really is a debate about the deep holes and the soil logs, then a condition of approval is that there's a method of determining that the soil logs are approved by the applicant's engineer and the town's engineer together. While they're there, the hole is dug, they agree to it. Those are very simple. So I'm encouraged actually by that discussion rather than discouraged, even though the engineers themselves may differ on the approach to the issue. Eventually, it can be resolved by conditions of approval. The issue of whether I'm suggesting that this, Kitty, I do not accuse this commission of ever discriminating. As a matter of fact, to the opposite, I would actually commend you for being patient with me all these years and listening to me. I've said that I do not want to see that your experts are going to try to put you in a position that you're going to be discriminative. That's my concern. It is certainly not with the commission. And if anything, I commend the commission for your fairness. And I thought I said that when I made my presentation. If there's any question, I've said it again. I'm just worried that in reviewing this plan against other plans that your experts have reviewed, that they're using different standards, and that would force you into potentially a discriminatory decision. And I don't think that'll happen. I really don't. So hopefully you'll accept my comments. By the way, I will tell you that Tim, in his comments, was a lot more caustic on that issue. And his experiences may be different from mine. That's different. The other thing is, Mr. O'Mara asked some simple questions. And again, going back to Rich, I'm not sure that, I mean, Steve tried to answer those, and maybe he answered them in engineering terms. But the one thing is that wells are problems because people in the state of Connecticut have limited rights to the underground water supply to their wells, which is the classic is you have two single family homes on a subdivision. One exists with a well, the second home comes in, drills, hits the exact same vein of water supplying the existing well and dries it up. And the question is, well, who has the right to that vein of water? That, unfortunately, under Connecticut law, the first homeowner really doesn't have any rights that are superior to the second owner. Steve answered your question, I hope, on the, if you blast and you destroy a well, or you impact a well or damage it, the blaster is 100% liable. But you have to do the pre-blast survey and get a log of the well.
But that's what Neil, sorry, that's super important context. So I just want to state that for the record, because that's what wasn't clear, I think. Yes, there's a legal responsibility. That's
absolutely.
Wrong. Yeah.
And,
Cool.
and your fire marshal, in issuing the blasting permit, is going to make sure that there's an insurance policy by the blaster to cover that. So clearly, but your real question is, what protects our water supply from getting contaminated or drying up? And by the way, I have a 65-foot well. You've got 140 feet, so you're in a lot better shape than I am. I got the same issue. And by the way, anybody who's sitting at this meeting who has a well has the same issue. The answer is, and again, one of the things Steve referred to in his presentation, the biggest threat in my mind is sodium, quite honestly. And we're the ones who are requiring that, because we scream if the roads aren't sanded and salted so that we can drive there safely when there's a storm. So there's a huge environmental threat to our water systems. And again, if your neighbor builds a septic system and that septic system leaks into your well, your neighbor's responsible. That's easy. But just general, pollution of a well in the environment because the town salts the roads or your neighbor salts his driveway is much more difficult to deal with. I don't have an answer for you other than to tell you that certain activities that definitely impact a well can be the responsibility of the person doing it. So that should be a simple answer, I hope. But your other question about, are there any limitations on how you landscape your property to make sure you don't interfere with your sight lines? Hopefully, Steve can correct me if I'm wrong. The sight lines that we measure are in areas where we have rights to maintain them. So we measure sight lines along the roadway, the town's right of way. We don't measure sight lines along our neighbor's property unless we have an easement to maintain those sight lines. And I've done a lot of those over the years on both sides where people have sold easements for sight lines and people have acquired them. But you have the absolute right to do landscaping on your property, and our applicant needs to make sure that his sight lines can be maintained in either the public right of way or on his property. So those are some what I think are simple answers to the questions. But at the end of the day, I think that the issues that were brought up, particularly about septic, as I started out saying, can be addressed with reasonable conditions, and they're not much different than a lot of the conditions you normally put on subdivisions and site plans to begin with. So again, I do thank the commission for your patience, and I actually thank our experts this evening for giving me a little bit of hope that in fact, this is not an impossible problem to overcome. Your concerns, I think, can be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Tom, I did have one question for you, just to make sure that my notes are correct. You did indicate that the minimum required for ISO class 4Y is a 30,000 gallon tank.
Correct.
I
And
believe Mr. Trinkus said he was staying with 10.
right. And he even alludes to it in his memo from November 6th that the duplex structure requires 500 gallons per minute for a 1 hour duration. So 500 times 60 is 30,000 gallons. So that would be the minimum. So that we're not even looking at for the 3 unit developed building. So yeah, even his memo does state basically it would require a 30,000 gallon minimum tank.
Okay, and can I please ask, what is ISO class 4Y?
So we're classified, it's a split classification of 4/4Y. It goes 1 to 10. 10 is the best rating. Large city departments like Hartford and City of Milford have that. Class 1 is the lowest rating. So we're at a 4, which is kind of almost in the middle, but the 4Y is for areas outside of hydranted districts of town, such as the Shelley Road area, Codfish Hill area, those areas. So that's based on the ability to shuttle water in at a certain gallons per minute from hydrants, and utilizing mutual aid tankers from various towns, et cetera, to provide that. So having a 30,000 gallon tank in that development will allow us to maintain for that area and for that development, that ISO classification. In that
Thank you very much.
Hey, Tom, quick question on that. Is
Sure.
is ISO classification strictly for insurance purposes, or is it?
Yeah, it's for insurance purposes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was just curious. Yeah, no, I didn't know if it was. I'm always trying to delineate between safety versus insurance versus.
Well, yeah. So it is for
Obviously,
insurance
it's a little
purposes,
safer, right? Right.
But it's also right. It's also it's in the
There's a
zoning
logical
regulations.
Yeah,
What's
I
that?
got it. There's a logical connection between insurability and safety in this context, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Beth, I have a question. Bob, did you want to say something? Bob Legnard?
No, I'm good.
With Laura Basile and seeking information from DEEP, is that information, should we close this evening? Is that information we could take in based on what she hears?
What she you can use the information that she stated for the record.
Okay, but if she gets feedback after we've closed the hearing from DEEP, we can't accept that, correct?
Chuck, I'm going to ask you to interject.
Sure. You can discuss with your consultants, with Beth or with Brian or with Tom or anyone. They're all consultants to the commission after the close of the public hearing, so you can speak with them. What you can't do is get new factual information. I don't know what the DEP will say. If DEP is just saying this is what the law is, then I suppose you could. I mean, they're an independent analyst too, but you know, so it sort of depends.
Okay, thank you. All right, then I'm going to reach out to.
Excuse me, Pat, could I
Yeah,
just,
go ahead.
I just want to say a few things. I just want to ask Tom, the way that Neil just presented your comments into the record, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of saying that, yeah, it seemed like it was a little bit construed the way he stated about the size of the tank being required there. Again, I'm just going back to Steve's memo here that basically states to meet the ISO criteria, that a 30,000 gallon water tank would be required. And again, we're looking at it from the ISO end of it for us to maintain the ratings and the classifications in our town. But again, it's a safety issue. It's the fact that this is a development that's 900 feet off the road, up a slope, with very difficult access for fire apparatus. So in the event of a fire in this building, and as Steve alluded to, he built a development where they haven't used one yet, and that's great. I'm glad they didn't have to use one. But there are times when it may not be a year after it built, it may be 30 years after it built. There may be a time to use the water tank. And having only a 10,000 gallon water supply obviously is not adequate if one of these units or both of these units are involved in fire. And the ability to shuttle water from another water supply, whether it's from a fire hydrant on Route 302, wherever it may be, it takes time to set it up. It takes time to get the mutual aid companies here. So it's a long process that obviously a lot of people aren't familiar with if you're not in the fire departments, and delays putting water on the fire. So in my opinion, that is an issue, to have the tank only be a 10,000 gallon size tank. The 30,000 gallon size tank will allow us more time and more water to extinguish a fire and not have to rely on that mutual aid and setting up that tanker shuttle operation. And now having multiple tanker trucks, 12-wheeler trucks going up and down that hill for periods of time to shuttle water back and forth. It's not just the aerial tower getting up there that one time. There's several vehicles that may need to traverse that road back and forth over a period of time if there was a major fire event up there involving the buildings.
Thanks, Tom. I had a question for Laura too, Pat, if I could ask.
Sure.
Laura, I just, in regards to the septic systems, I'm just trying to make it, like Rich is saying, to keep it very, very, a little bit more simplistic so everyone understands. And you're dealing with a septic design right now. So I've been doing this for about 20 years now. And I just I don't recall a time where you flag a development until the septic design can be fully completed to the satisfaction of the health director and the health department and the state codes that are involved. So basically, you could flag this development and wait for a septic design and then go, oops, we can't put it there. We can only put 3. We can't put 2 or 4. And you just wait till then to do it. I just don't understand that concept.
Thank you, Beth. I really appreciate it. And
Laura, could you speak up? I can't hear you, huh? Ma'am, I'm sorry.
Brian, see if you can help me here.
I think your computer is set above your the direction of your voice. You're saying,
I think the bigger issue is her mic sensitivity is low.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Barely.
Barely. If you could just speak really loud.
All right, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So, thank you, Beth. The situation is that the code that we are talking about is 30 years old or so, and it says don't create a lot if you have unsuitable soil conditions, because the likelihood of having a problem is high. And in this case, we have unsuitable soil conditions. And the health department is giving you the page out of the technical standards, which says you don't want to create a public health problem. So you guide me, Rich, or anyone, but I'm trying to share that with the design in front of you, I don't know if there's 4 feet to ledge or if there's groundwater less than 18 inches from the ground surface. And that means that right now, that is not suitable until demonstrated. And if there is ledge at 36 and 43, or whatever is the reserve for the building A that makes it unsuitable, that knocks out a whole building. And the public health code doesn't say guess. Right. The public health code says, please do the soil testing and the appropriate evaluation that is warranted. In fact, as I've written to you, I asked the applicant, because of shallow groundwater and ledge, to do the actual hydraulic studies that I believe this lot needs to make sure that raw sewage doesn't end up in the O'Meara well. Mm-hmm. And in the code, I've given you the public health code regulation citations that tell a director of health that in this kind of situation, you want to know before that happens. We don't wait until the sewage is in Mr. O'Meara's well. We do that work now and have an assurance that the sewage will not end up in there. And I thank you, Beth, for helping me be as plain language as I can.
Thank you, Laura.
Well, Rich's comments in regards to that, I think was important.
Yeah.
Pat, I'm all set.
Sorry, Beth. I was just going to say, hey, Laura, no, thank you. That's it's much more clear. And if I'm allowed to speak, I don't know, Pat, am I allowed to?
No, go ahead.
My point, I think, in all this, and maybe this is my hope for a better world, right? Like maybe just, I know you've made recommendations, but for everybody to work together, right? Steve, get together, go out to the site, say, hey, this is where we need test pits drilled. Like it doesn't appear to be rocket science. I'm not a builder. I'm not an engineer. I don't do what you guys do, but I'm simply here as an elected volunteer.
Thank you for that. But understand that as I've written you and gave you the best of my expertise, we are not here because of Bethel Health Department. Bethel Health Department told the applicant everything that they would need to do to have the facts they need to go before you. And they didn't do that. And I can't make people do things. I can only be straight and honest and accurate and
Oh, totally.
help people.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm trying to be non-contrarian to any side here. It's more like it's on paper. Let's not wait until the public hearing to say, well, I think I'm right, and maybe I'm right.
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 Absolutely.
That's it. That's it.
Thank you, Laura. All right, and based on all the information now that we've heard.
Excuse me, Pat, Steve Trinkus,
Yes, Steve.
want 2 seconds. I concur with Neil Marcus. I have done many affordable housing projects, and a reasonable condition of requiring additional test holes is actually the intent of the law. Regarding the septics overall, only until recently in the planning and zoning process did we ever get comments from the health department. We spent 1.5 years in front of wetlands when I would hope that the applications were shared with the health department. We never had comments from them until the end of this process, for the record. Secondly, on page 35 of the technical standards, the third paragraph, and I'm going to read this line: reserve areas for multifamily dwellings and commercial buildings do not have to be prepared with select fill unless the designated reserve area is located under pavement or poured concrete. So even if I have 36 inches to bedrock, it meets the minimum suitability and does not have to be prepared. That is right in the code.
That's incorrect. It's
I'm sorry, Laura, excuse me, I have the floor. If you want to talk, you can talk after me.
Please, let's stay professional.
I'm sorry, I have the floor. It's on page 35. It's the bottom of the third paragraph. You can look it up. Thank you.
All right, so I think we have an issue here of people agreeing to disagree. Again, if I could go back to based on everything we've heard, Beth, do you have any other input?
I just wanted to clarify, and I apologize to the commission. David is here this evening just to clarify, this was not referred to the health department as part of the Inland Wetlands Commission review.
That's correct.
Thank you, David. Pat, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. What I would like to do is suggest we close the meeting this evening. And if I may, by a consensus, do you all agree?
In the hearing, you mean?
I'll close the hearing, yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I agree.
And I have a comment.
Yes, Bob.
Several things have been said that we could do by condition of approval with this project, and I hate to leave that open by closing the hearing right now. I'd like to get the final remarks out of the health department before we would close any public hearing. Thank you.
Beth, do we have time if we don't close it tonight?
Right now, this is it. This is your date that you have to close your hearing. As far as the health department, is it something I would defer to our counsel, because it is my understanding, and we have done this in previous applications, just to clarify so we're not being accused of being prejudiced or discriminating, where we have had to ask questions of our experts in order to help you make get clarifications in order to render a good decision. Am I correct, Chuck?
Yes, yes, you could continue. Well, again, you can't get new information. There's some question of whether something should come from DEEP. My sense of that was not directly about the septic, that was about something else. I think that Laura Vasile and Brian Baker have all submitted lengthy letters to the record, so I think it's there. I don't think there's any more factual information that's needed. Other than that, what if DEP, which again, they don't even have jurisdiction according to Laura, on this. So I think you could, assuming you can just check with Lauren and Brian to see if they'd like to submit any more at this time. Ask them for the record. Why don't we start with Brian? That's okay. Brian, is there any more comments that you'd like to make at this time, or additional information? Would you like to?
No, everything's in the record. You can read that section of the health code for yourselves, where it talks about the fact that you do have to have 4 feet to native soil for multifamily residences for the reserve. So, I mean, the material's all in the record. So if you close the hearing, you have the materials before you. If you needed to contact us for clarification of the materials that were submitted or the health code, we could provide clarification. But if there's no additional testing or information going to be provided by the applicant, there's nothing more that we're going to provide for a review. Our review is done and complete.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Chuck Anders, Attorney for the Commission. Laura, do you agree?
I agree with what Brian said.
Okay.
I just had wanted to clarify what Brian said. It's very, very important to understand that this isn't a subdivision. It's not single family development. It's a multifamily dwelling project, and the rules are a little different, and it requires 100% reserve areas, and it requires suitable soil conditions.
Oh, okay, so it sounds like the record is full. You know, the commission can look for advice about who's correct in their interpretation. We can discuss that, but it doesn't look like we need additional information to close the hearing.
Thank you, Chuck. Bob, are you comfortable with that?
I'll go along with Andrew.
Okay. All right, if I may, by consensus, are we all in agreement that we can close this public hearing?
Here, here.
Yes.
Show of
I
hands,
think-
please.
I think so, Pat.
John, you agree?
I do. Thank you. Close it.
Kitty, you agree?
I do.
I'm only asking because I can't see your picture.
That's okay.
Linda?
Yes.
Okay. All right, this public hearing is closed. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Closed.
All right, moving on. Next on our agenda is our business meeting. Meeting minutes of 10:27. I don't have to seat anyone because all our full-time members are here. If I may have a motion, please.
Motion to approve the minutes of, I don't have my glasses on, October 27th.
Thank you. I'm sorry, who seconded?
Bob, second.
Thank you, Bob. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Invoices. Frederick Clark Associates, 9/29/2020 for $2,540. If I may have a motion to pay the invoice.
Let's pay the invoice of the amount you stated.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Penny.
Penny.
Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Moving on. We have a work session for Tarzia Special Permit Accessory Apartment, 103 Putnam Park Road. If someone would like to start input on this?
Sure, I don't mind. I think it was a pretty straightforward application. They took all the steps I think that needed to be taken, and I'm in favor of approval, of asking for an approval or making approval.
Hey,
Aye.
or Beth or Pat, I couldn't wrap my head around. I was Googling the property. I couldn't wrap my head around where the heck that building is. I know where the house is across from Stex, right? I couldn't figure out where the proposed addition was.
It's going to be attached to the, it's going to be attached to the existing house.
But but I couldn't orient it. Behind it, to the garage.
Off to the side.
It's off to the side.
It looked like it was off to the side, yeah.
Yeah, it was very difficult to see how it attached. I don't have a fundamental problem with it. I was just curious because it is essentially a little cottage that's somehow attached to the house.
Beth, would you like me to pull up the plans again?
I don't
nice.
know the rendering. I don't care. No, Dave, it's fine.
Oh, no, I think it helps, Rich. Please.
Okay.
Okay. Just bear with me.
Because I can remember which side it was off.
Yeah, because it's a narrow. It's a fair. Listen. I live on Oxford Street. It's a narrow property. Everything the land here is. So I'm always like, wow, how can you fit a little house next to your house? Okay, so but there's a big swale to the right. So all right, so it's going to be kind of up against that little hill. or that other parcel, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Good?
Yeah, yeah, no, all good. No, I don't have any complaints. I mean, it's his parents. Like,
All right. Would someone like to, Beth, do I need an approval or just a consensus on this to send it forward?
I need an approval.
Okay.
I'd like to see you make a decision tonight if you're all in agreement with it, just so we can keep it moving along on the
That's what we're
table.
gonna do.
Sure. Okay, do you want me for an approval?
go for it, Kitty.
Okay, I'd like to approve the site plan of Tarzia special permit, accessory apartment 103 Putnam Park Road. And you know the drill, okay? With,
The standard
it has,
stipulations
with
that
all
we
the stipulations that
for
we-
accessory apartments,
exactly.
and you waiving the, you want, and also you're willing
And
to.
the
waive
waiver, of
requirement.
course. We're
Okay.
doing
Standard conditions. Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
standard
Yeah,
conditions.
yeah, actually 50.
May I have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, Penny.
There we go. Aren't we clever, Betty? You and I.
You're going to run me over on Greenwood Avenue one day.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Now, we did have Oakwoods LLC under work session for tonight, but it's 9:45.
Thank you.
So what I'd like to do is move this off to, when is the next appropriate meeting, Beth, to discuss this?
Well, you have 65 days on Oakwoods to make your decision.
Okay.
The 65 days end on December 25th. So
Oh, we have,
You know something? I'm not busy on December 25th.
That's right. You're not.
Penny, nobody is this year.
Well, I'm going movie. Can't go
all
for
right, we're getting giddy. We're getting giddy. There's
the 9th of December?
there's a lot of coordination that we have to do here. I'm going to ask a few things with you guys on an individual basis. If you feel that there is some clarification from some of your experts that you may want to be able to have just ask questions of at your meeting, we need to coordinate that. Not all your experts were here at this meeting tonight. I don't know how you want to do that, but I need you to think about that. I need you to think about it quickly.
Okay.
And get in touch with me on an individual basis. If you would like one of your experts to be available, probably by phone or whatever, to, if you have a question or have a question about clarifying something that's in the record.
Okay.
Number two, Chuck also has to be available to help with your deliberations too. Your next regular meeting is on the 24th. You also have a big application that night. That's 155 Greenwood Avenue, and they will be coming in with revisions. I'm wondering if we could possibly schedule a Monday night.
Well, that's probably it.
Sure.
Depends when.
I was thinking we could start deliberations on the, David, when is your meeting?
Beth, my Inland Wetlands Commission meeting is on November 23rd, I believe, the Monday before the next regular meeting this month for
Okay.
planning and zoning.
So that's not gonna work. Okay, do you want to start, possibly, would you want to start deliberations on the 16th? I'm gonna throw a couple of dates at you. Do you guys have your calendars with you?
I can't make that evening. I have a work.
Okay. I'm gonna just throw dates out. You tell me.
I can
You're
make,
talking about December dates, Beth?
No, I'm talking
No.
about November.
Beth, I can make almost any November date.
Okay. Wednesday, how about Wednesday, the 18th?
Fine.
Fine.
Penny, no good? What day? Okay, what day is good for Penny?
I am totally cool. If I have to be excused from that meeting, the majority, we need to do this.
Yeah, just see Rob for.
Well, this is
Move
just
forward, and
Oakwood.
it's all good. Seriously, my schedule, my calendar looks like a Jackson Pollock painting these days.
Sorry.
It's
Are we-
like,
Are we talking about both Oakwoods and,
I would put them both on the agenda, correct?
okay, all
Are
right.
you talking, Beth? What
Excuse
da-
me?
What date are you talking?
what about starting next Wednesday, if I can, the 18th?
Oh, I can't. We have another meeting that night, Pat and Bob.
Yeah, I can't.
Beth, if I may for a second, I think it's very important for the entire commission to be available for these meetings and have a full, true consensus of what the commission thinks. I'm so sick of party lines deciding, making decisions. I think as a group, because we were all elected, we should be all on the same page and we all should make the hard decisions.
I agree, John.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want to go back to Monday the 16th?
Okay, Penny, what's a good date for you?
I'm just thinking, what time would we do it on the 18th?
Oh, I can't.
Oh, you can't.
We
Okay.
can't.
I can't either.
So we're also looking at the 16th?
Well, the 17th. What about that? I don't know.
The 17th is zoning board of appeals.
Oh,
We have
sorry.
2 public hearings that night.
Right, and I cannot possibly make that. I can finagle my way to do the 16th.
That's a Tuesday night?
That's a Monday night.
Monday night.
Monday.
Next Monday.
I can do that.
Yeah, I guess so.
Next Monday.
To start talking about Oakwoods and Shelley, okay.
Will that give you all enough time to review the record?
That's what I was gonna say. People have to review the record and get to you with any questions.
So we just closed Shelley Road, so we have 65 days from tonight. And
Right.
Beth already mentioned that we have until December 25th. So
Right.
I would recommend at least a week and a half for everybody to reach out to Beth with their individual questions or concerns to make sure that everybody's on the same page and the experts are available the night of the meeting. And I don't think you could reasonably get that done by the 16th.
You're right, Sean. You're right. What about the 19th, which is the Thursday?
Good.
Good.
Everybody's okay, all right?
Chuck,
I can't make that.
I thought you meet on Thursdays, don't you?
I do, yeah.
Okay. Okay, guys, we're running into some problems.
Well, isn't the next regular meeting the 24th?
Yes, but as Beth pointed out already, that meeting already has a very
That's
busy
Greenwood.
agenda.
We're gonna do Greenwood, and that's gonna be a big public hearing.
Yeah. Be big.
Why wasn't the 16th good?
No, you need more time. John is correct.
Okay.
The date I see now is November 30th.
David, on the 23rd, if you're running a meeting and I'm running a meeting, do we run into problems?
Beth, we wouldn't run into any problems. It just would be that I wouldn't be able to partake in this meeting for the
Okay.
duration of however long wetlands would take.
Okay. Do you have a big meeting Monday night?
We have one application that we are reviewing. It's a site plan review.
Okay. All right, everybody, Monday, November 23rd.
Okay.
Fine by me.
Will that work?
Yes, works for me.
Yep.
Okay.
I really have to emphasize, you have almost 2 weeks to put your thoughts together, 2 weeks to go through the record. But I really need, if we need anyone else's input regarding this, I need to know as soon as possible.
Okay.
Okay.
Chuck, do you have anything to add?
No.
And just to confirm, we're going to be discussing, I'm sorry, my brain is.
Oakwoods.
And Shelley,
Oh,
right?
Well, I think we should focus on Oak.
Yeah.
Okay, we certainly can talk about Shelley, but
No,
we
you're right,
don't, right, exactly.
Oh, wait a minute. Well, when is the 65 days for Shelley up?
I didn't go with that
Oh, the
yet.
65 days for Oakwoods is, did you say was Christmas Day?
Yes.
Well, let's do, Beth, if I can jump in here real quick, if you don't mind. So the public hearing, if I'm not mistaken, for Oakwoods was closed 2 weeks ago on October 27th. Is
David,
that correct?
excuse me, we already timed and dated this, so we know.
Right.
the date.
Right, but I'm just going along with the thought process of if we know when Oakwoods close and we have a date from when that is to now, wouldn't the 65 days for our decision period be just the same difference between when we closed Oak Woods and when we closed Shelley Woods?
No.
It's 2 weeks longer from, it's 65 days from today.
Correct.
If you're going to use December 25th is the deadline for Oak, add 2 weeks to December 25th, and that's when we have to have a decision.
That's what I was trying to say, John.
Right. Well, I mean, but we all know that.
Okay.
I expect you need at least 2, maybe 3 meetings. One meeting is deliberation to give direction to staff as to draft a resolution, and then the next meeting to vote on it. But that may take more than 1 meeting, depending on the deliberation. So
Correct.
For sure.
Expect 2 or 3 meetings.
Correct.
So the 23rd is going to be our meeting night?
That'll be a special meeting. It'll be, I would like to see both items on the agenda,
Oh, okay.
and we'll start at,
Hold on if you.
John, if we gotta go late, we go late. It is what it is.
Right, but we need to remember, we need to focus on that you can't blend the two together. They're two projects that need to be discussed separately. So even though they're on the agenda, you start with one, you finish with that one, and then you open up the new envelope.
That's right.
They're two totally different projects.
Well, I know, but when they're on the agenda for a work session, it's really easy to start talking about two different addresses in the
Right.
same.
Yeah, we have to know how to separate them, John. I think we can do that.
okay. All right, so we're all set. We're gonna call a special meeting for November 23rd, 7 PM.
Yep.
Do it.
Okay, if anybody has any questions or comments, just pick up the phone and call me.
All right, thank you. Moving on, commission comments?
I'm tired.
BJ, any comments?
Neil's laughing with you, kitty.
I know, I thought that. Thank you.
Okay, public input?
BJ out there?
She's there. She was. Yeah, she's there.
Unmute yourself, BJ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing from me.
Thank you, BJ.
Hey.
What about the rest? There's other folks out there. Anybody?
Okay, that's it. Let's call it.
Anyone else want to talk to us?
Nobody else is asking to comment.
Cut
All
off.
right, if I may have a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Good night, everybody.
Oh.